Part 108. I'm Really Immortal. Author, Chulian Kuikan Ru Siahua. Chapter 1098. The dead branches creaked in the wind and rain, and fell into the lake in pieces. Feeling that the chill did not leave because of the hustle and bustle of the Nanmei garden, Lu Chang'an carried Su Mei into the yard. After walking around the covered bridges and trails, we arrived at a loft that stretched into the lake. A bonfire was lit on the terrace facing the water outside the building, burning brightly. It was not affected by the slanting wind and drizzle at all, and the heat was transferred to the loft. Scattered out in all directions. Opposite the attic is a stage built for the fireworks tonight. A small mountain of various fireworks is hidden under the waterproof tarpaulin, waiting for the rain to lighten up to bloom. The attic window grills were bright, and through the transparent glass, Lu Chang'an saw Qin Peng talking to Yesijin, and his expression seemed a little excited. That place was burned, killed, and plundered by the Japanese before, and then the land was stripped again. When we went there, when the fellow saw us, he knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. He brought a pot of leaves, broken rice stalks and bran mixed together. He trembled and said, "Master, there is really nothing at home." We quickly took dry food and distributed it to the fellow villagers there, only then did they finally believe that we were different. As he spoke, Qin Peng slammed the table hard. "I swear, we must let our people, when they see our army, not tremble and kneel down to beg for mercy, but smile with joy and treat them as family members. You have made too many vows, and this must be fulfilled." Yesijin patted her cousin on the shoulder and sighed slightly. There were too many things to do and changes to make, so she could only try to figure them out slowly. "Except for not becoming a train driver, which of my vows have not been fulfilled?" After saying that, Qin Peng nodded arrogantly. "I have been a railway worker, so I can be considered to be related to a train driver." Yesijin smiled and remembered what happened when she was a child. Her brother ordered a train from Europe and put it on the railway between Linnan and Shanghai. It was convenient for Yesijin, who didn't like taking long-distance buses, to go on vacation. Qin Peng saw the train. He liked trains so much that he vowed to be a train driver when he grew up and drive this train around. His brother also asked him to lay railroad tracks all over the country. Thinking about it now, what my brother said at that time planted a seed in Qin Peng's heart, and the look on Su Mei's face at that time also planted a seed in the heart of the young Yesijin. After all, the aunt and sister are sworn in. So many years have passed in the blink of an eye. The carefree childhood was a time of innocence and ignorance that makes people miss it. Let's partner up tonight. It's best to let my sister-in-law lose and go bankrupt. What's the use of so much money? If the fireworks don't go off at night, I'll use them to buy guns and cannons to equip at least one regiment," Qin Peng said in a low voice, thinking about it when he was a child. The woman who was called Major and now sister-in-law is still a little timid. My brother is in charge, and now she is doing serious business, saving the country through industry, and raising funds for the rear. If you make her lose everything, you are killing the goose to obtain the egg. Yesijin also couldn't stand Su Mei's extravagant lifestyle, but thinking about her family's past, thinking about his brother, there was no way he could say what he said to accuse Su Mei. "I'm just talking. I haven't played cards for a long time. I'll try my luck with a few games later. If my sister-in-law doesn't give in, I'll have to ask my brother for help in the end." Qin Peng felt confident after saying that, even though his eldest brother had taken over the property. The management has been handed over to Su Mei, but who hasn't spent some private money yet? Every time Qin Peng went to beg for help, he would always dig a little here and pull a little there to get it for Qin Peng. Qin Peng's biggest wish is to wait for the country to usher in peace, then take a train with his eldest brother and travel across this great country. He wants to be a train driver for his eldest brother. Playing cards always requires people to let go. What's the point? Su Mei walked in and heard Qin Peng's last words, smiling. "Every time Ziking suddenly comes to play with me, I get a headache and don't send him away. No, he won't leave, just let him go and he'll come back for more next time. Qin Penghan laughed twice and felt a little hot, but when he thought about the career he wanted to do and what he was doing, his personal face didn't matter. He was already used to being laughed at by her. Sister May, it's wrong for you to say that. Yes, Ijin also smiled. Brother, originally a share of the family property was left for Ziking, at most, it was a shareholder who came to get dividends. How can you say it was just a waste? If you think if it's not appropriate, calculate the shares again and clear out my and Ziking's shares. If you have the strength to buy back, we will have nothing to say. Haha, Jinner is really becoming more and more eloquent. Are you kidding me? If the family talks about returning the purchase, doesn't that mean they have to separate? It's too emotional. Sumay paused for a moment, the corners of her mouth raised slightly, but Jinner has also reached the age of talking about marriage. This share was originally meant to be used as a dowry. I don't know which boy it will be cheaper for. Maybe the emperor marrying his daughter is not as good as Master Ye marrying his sister. If the country is like this, why should we call it home? The champion Ho of 2000 years ago had already explained this clearly. Yes, Ijin said lightly, and it was difficult to hold back the frustration in her heart. This Sumay is a wealthy lady from the old era who was poisoned by feudal ideas. The implication behind her words is that she is throwing water on her married daughter, implying that Yes, Ijin will marry out sooner or later to take advantage of outsiders. She, Sumay, is the one who married with her family property. The family members who came in. Jinner is a person who understands things and does big things. It seems that I have to accept the baptism of advanced ideas and keep pace with the times. Otherwise, I don't understand what you are saying. I only know how to worry about family affairs and, things need to be done in a pattern without a pattern, and in a vision without a vision. Sumay also sighed softly, looking at him with some self-pity. Thank you, Sister May, for the compliment. What big things can I do? I haven't done anything. Instead, I've been busy and delayed my family affairs. Look, I haven't had time to accompany my brother during this period. Fortunately, Sister May, you can come here. In the future when I have free time, I naturally want to make up for my brother. How about traveling around the country by train with Ziking? After saying that, Yes, Ijin turned her head with warmth and attachment in her brows. Qin Peng waved his hands repeatedly. He already felt that something was wrong in the atmosphere, and pursed his lips calmly. If a word was leaked, it would be his own misfortune in the end, whichever party he offended. Sumay felt even tighter in her chest. This Yes, Ijin, it is not unfair at all to say that she is sharp-tongued and sharp-tongued. This level of yin and yang is at least 67% of what his brother was capable of when he was not a human being. Fortunately, Sister May, you can come here. It seems that because she, Yes, Ijin, is not with him, Sumay can take advantage of it. When she comes back in the future, nothing will happen to Sumay. Is this what a sister-in-law and sister-in-law say? In comparison, Qin Peng, who can be bribed with money, is pleasing to the eye. Those who want money are really easy to get rid of. This Yes, Ijin doesn't want money, but she wants people. Look at you, you guys start fighting as soon as we meet. You're so skinny. Lu Chang'an took advantage of his height and stretched out his hand to take the three people in front of him into his arms. Qin Peng was also tall, and he quickly bowed his head, so that his elder brother could gently pat the back of his head with his palm. Lu Chang'an tilted his cheek slightly and rubbed the top of Yes, Ijin's head. The girl in front of him was not Qin Yanan, but the little girl who liked to eat bird's nest porridge with his brother in many of his dreams. It's just, this is still a dream. Snapped. There was a sound of fireworks exploding outside the window, followed by dazzling lights and shadows blooming in the rainy night, and high and low voices rising and falling from far and near. In every household around Nanmei Garden, some people walked into their own yards, while others just opened the doors and windows, looked up at the air conditioning, and gradually became lost in thought. They put their hands in their pockets and stared at the thousands of flowers blossoming on the east wind night in front of them. Stars fall like rain in all kinds of clear, turbid, and old eyes. The fireworks would go off for a while, and Chin Peng opened the window of the terrace facing the water, making the beautiful scenery even more shocking. The people's shouts made the scene more real, but Chin Peng, who had seen too many scenes of people living in dire straits, was in a daze. It's just that he is a determined person. He quickly got rid of the unnecessary emotional influence and felt that his heart was bleeding. If these fireworks were exchanged for arms. Brother, when we were young, we would set off fireworks and watch them every year. Yesijin leaned in her brother's arms, her bright eyes blurred by the color of the fireworks and lake scenery. Lu Chang'an did not speak, but hugged her harder. The scene at this moment was so dreamy, and she in his arms was so real. It made him think in a daze that he was still Yechinayu, and the scene in front of him was his current experience, but the memories of Lu Jianxi and Lu Chang'an were a little distant, as if they were drifting and hidden deep in his memory. This feeling made him wake up. The thought just now was probably the so-called inner demon. In Xiangxia novels, we see strong people who encounter the temper of their inner demons when they ascend. They often sink into a certain memory or period of time in the past, and are ultimately unable to extricate themselves and fail to ascend. If Lu Chang'an had an ordinary person's mind, he would probably easily fall into this kind of dream where he could not distinguish between illusion and reality, and he would eventually be played by Shang Guandandan. And that Long, who had always wanted to usurp the throne, probably she would give him, who had finally turned into a walking zombie due to the sinking of his character, to her stepmothers to play with in exchange for supporting her in ascending to the position of sect leader. Thinking about these messy things, Lu Chang'an became extremely sober. When he looked down at Yesijin in his arms, the sense of reality had dissipated a lot. He couldn't help but sigh slightly in his heart. He didn't want to sink, but he still lingered on the illusory satisfaction. Human beings, he was always so confused, and so was he. After watching the fireworks for a while, Chin Peng came back to study the mahjong tiles without much interest, preparing to win money from his sister-in-law later. Su Mei seemed to have something to do. She glanced at Lu Chang'an tenderly, and then left in the direction of the covered bridge leading to the outside of Nanmei Garden. Lu Chang'an was heartbroken. He had not forgotten his main task tonight. After tying Yesijin's shawl, he flashed and followed Su Mei from a distance. My blood is phoenix blood, can it make the potion take effect? Su Mei came to a monastery outside Nanmei Garden. After chatting with a nun for a few words, she suddenly let out a low voice in surprise. Celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival. Actually it's all kinds of requests, but I expressed them implicitly because I was embarrassed. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 1099. Nanmei Garden was built in the Song dynasty and was originally one of the Jiangnan gardens planned by Zhuzhu Fenglai Jianmen. There are many female elders and high-ranking disciples in the Zhuzhu Fenglai sword section. Sometimes it is inevitable that people will get together to fight, and the sect leader will be unable to parry the beatings, or there will be verbal quarrels, leaving the sect leader alone. Therefore, the placement of disciples has always been a key issue to be studied and solved. Therefore, the construction of a large number of high-end residences has become a stopgap measure. Although everyone has a lot of debates about the grade, location, design, cost, etc. of the residence, fortunately, the method has been implemented. However, before the Nanmei Garden was completed, the sect owner had already sailed away. Nowadays, many gardens in various places in the south of the Yangtze River that are difficult to verify the reason for their construction and the source of funds are mostly left over from the Kyushu Fenglai Sword Gate. Fortunately, when the high-end residence allocation plan was implemented, special funds had been entrusted and paid. The main part of the construction of Nanmei Garden was not completed until the end of the Song dynasty. It was then stagnant for 100 years, and the restoration was already in the hands of Sumi Izu. After hundreds of years of repairs, Nanmei Garden covers an area of large, and there are several Buddhist temples and Taoist temples in the garden. However, when a monastery was built next to it, Yechinayu at that time and Lu Chang'an now did not know. After all, unlike modern people who know the area of their own toilets very well, in a place like Nanmei Garden, demolishing or building several courtyards may not cause any disturbance. The monastery is not majestic, but has a unique shape. It is different from the Gothic, Baroque and Renaissance church styles that people think of. It is full of modernist architectural styles. Especially the roof with rolled leaf edges is very reminiscent of the Langchamp church that was built more than 10 years later. Although in Lu Chang'an's eyes, Langxiang Church is like something made by Zhou Dongdong and Shang Guandandan playing with building blocks, but he is famous and can interpret countless artistic concepts, so it is not easy to say, what the hell, we used to live in the countryside, all landowners' barns look like this. The decoration of nuns and crosses convinced Lu Chang'an that this was indeed a church and not a barn. Sumei would come to see her at this time, which is enough to show the influence of this nun on Sumei. Just like wife cakes are not made from wives, phoenix blood is not extracted from real phoenixes, the nun said to Sumei. Lu Chang'an frowned slightly. The nun's voice seemed familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere. Looking at his height and body shape, could it be that Shang Guandandan is pretending to be? No, the mission in Nanmei Garden was thought up by Shang Guandandan, which meant that she also wanted to know why he was successfully set up that night. If Shang Guandandan gets involved himself, it will only interfere with Lu Chang'an's completion of the task, and Shang Guandandan will not be able to know the reason. Lu Chang'an can be sure that after Shang Guandandan finds out, he will probably prepare those potions and then use them to seduce her daughters-in-law. Whoever gives me a subway ticket vending machine, this potion that can turn Lu Chang'an into your toy belongs to whoever it is. Lu Chang'an sighed slightly. He used to be such a free and unscrupulous person, but now he always feels restrained by Shang Guandandan. He must be careful of her trying to trick him at any time. If she is really a cultivator from another world, she must find an opportunity. Throw her back to cultivate immortality. Immortal cultivators should pursue the path of Wuji without any distractions. What does it mean to play and make trouble under the plane trees, in the community, and around the Bailong Center all day long? Then what does this phoenix blood mean? Sumei asked. Phoenix is a kind of destiny. A woman with a phoenix destiny may be related to the phoenix in myths and legends, and the blood of a woman with a phoenix destiny can be called phoenix blood, the nun continued to explain. Where did this nun come from? It's just like a fortune teller on the street. Even if you tell me about heaven's destiny or devil's destiny, it's more reliable than the phoenix's destiny. This belongs to the spread of pagan culture, and it would have been barbecued in the early years. There is no such creature as the phoenix in any Western culture. Can she understand the connotation of the phoenix? Could this be a local nun turned nun? The accent is hard to tell which country he is from. Lu Changjing listened quietly. He now does not interfere with the trajectory of history. As for knowing the reason, there is no need for the historical plot of this night to be repeated. After all, Shang Guandandan still doesn't know where he is hiding and how he is spying on everyone. Phoenix fate, Sumei was slightly surprised, but not complacent. In the traditional understanding, those empresses, queen mothers, etc. are probably phoenix destiny, which is nothing in Sumei's eyes. After all, I often hear the remarks of Yesijin and Qin Peng, saying that they have been swept into history. Things in the trash. It's different from what you thought. This is not the mysterious and nihilistic theory of fate, but the science of blood. After my research, I found that the phoenix once really came to our Earth. Although she disappeared later, she left behind it some blood relations, You are one of the lucky ones who have inherited these blood relations. The nun seemed to understand the plainness of Sumei's surprise. This is a woman with a high spirit and her own capital, so the nun was chosen as a collaborator for many years to come. Sister, the more you talk, the more outrageous you are, Sumei said indifferently. I admire your knowledge very much, and I firmly believe that you are preparing our plan rationally and seriously, but, is this unscientific? Westerners are not. Do you pursue scientific concepts more? Nothing, they were still studying cow urine and eating mummies a while ago. The nun chuckled twice. Didn't you say that when you assassinated Yechinayu, he punished you? A faint blush appeared on Sumei's cheeks. This kind of secret matter should not be confided to a third person. However, the nun asked that everything be done in detail, not to mention that this matter also gave rise to a lot of doubts in Sumei's heart. But as you get closer to him, and you get to know his temperament and behavior more and more, the suspicions in your heart become more serious. It doesn't seem like something he would do. Many people have done things to offend him. There are even more serious provocations and attacks than yours, but he only punishes you like that. The nun's eyes shined in the night, reflecting the fireworks in the sky. Sumei's heart trembled slightly, and she stretched out her soft white fingers under Yun's sleeves. She already understood what the nun meant. Is he actually being tempted by the phoenix blood and acting impulsively? Yeah, the nun nodded. When Lu Chang'an heard this, he was a little shaken. She pierced his clothes that night, but he didn't bleed. Then he punished her and stained the brocade quilt with blood. Was he really tempted by the blood of the phoenix? But if that's the case, wouldn't he be tempted by phoenix blood every day now? It was still the purest and most original phoenix blood. Shang Guandandan dangled a thermos bottle in front of him every day. Either Shang Guandandan is not phoenix. This is extremely unlikely. Either Shang Guandandan's thermos bottle strongly suppressed Lu Chang'an's impulse. No one would be impulsive to a little old lady holding such a big thermos pot, wandering around, playing cards, and grabbing gifts from a healthcare product company. Well, that might be the case. He is indeed a little obsessed with me. Sumei admitted this shyly, with a slightly proud tone, but it's not as impulsive as it was at the beginning. We have a pretty normal relationship between men and women now, although it feels a bit like glue, but not to the extent that the king will not come to court early from now on. Because what you originally had was the phoenix's first blood. I named the virgin blood of a woman with the phoenix destiny like this. The nun stretched out her finger to push her nose, but she was not wearing glasses. You can ask tentatively. Has he ever met a woman like you who impulsively takes possession of her for the first time? Sumei hesitated for a moment and shook her head. She did get jealous easily, but now he had already drawn a clear line with those little foxes. The only annoying person was Yesijin. He had been with someone in the past. Let's talk about it later. In short, after adding your blood, the potion can be officially prepared. This potion can not only make men and women unable to control themselves, but more importantly, it may be able to solve your infertility problem. The nun took it off. The hat of the cloak turned to the side, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised, and his eyelashes blinked, revealing a sly smile. Nikola Tesla. When Lu Chang'an saw her iconic red hair, he immediately recognized the nun's true identity. It turned out that it was at this time that Tesla began to use Sumei's layout. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kuiken Ru Xiahua. Chapter 1100. Many of the mysteries in Lu Chang'an's mind have been solved. The phoenix blood indeed had an irresistible allure for him. What happened in Vyang Palace back then, when Shang Guandandan mingled with the palace maids, was certainly an inducement, but the root cause was the most powerful supernatural being. Mutual attraction. In addition to knowing the existence of Lu Chang'an, Tesla also knew about the arrival of the Phoenix earlier than he did, and began to make plans after discovering that Su-mei had the blood of the Phoenix. Su-mei was finally able to give birth to Zhu Huntang. In addition to what she said was the use of Tesla's biotechnology, the most essential reason for Lu Chang'an's residual blood essence in Ms. Karnstein's body was that she herself was of Phoenix bloodline, Shangguan Dandan. A clone or a feather or something like that. In other words, even without Tesla's help, now that Shangguan Dandan is here, as long as she is willing to provide some assistance, Lu Chang'an can even have a second, third, or fourth child with any other woman. It would probably consume one of her feathers or something. Lu Chang'an thought of the quilt she made with countless phoenix feathers. If Zhu Huntang could really have so many offspring, Zhu Huntang would definitely not be as arrogant as she is now. She has been blatantly saying that Lu Chang'an only has a bleeding dragon like her as his heir, and she must be allowed to ride on his neck to dominate. The only remaining doubt now is the arrival of the Phoenix a local event, or is it an event involving travelers from another dimension? Lu Chang'an hopes to figure this out in his dream tonight. He returned to the Nanmei garden and glanced at the young Qin Peng and Ye Sijin who were looking up at the fireworks from a distance. He jumped away, looked up to the sky and called out, "Lu Sin. This is a dream, and Ye Sijin is not real." He is not obsessed with nostalgia as if captured by his inner demon. She has become Qin Yanan, and she is still pregnant with his child, with a gestational sac. What he did should not be memories in dreams, but in reality to satisfy his sister's attachment to him. The half-human dog Lu Sin came through the night. The rain was still falling in pieces, but there was no wet drop of water on its smooth skin. Lu Chang'an turned over and got on the dog. Go to the next level. Although the prompt box that the task was completed did not pop up, Lu Chang'an judged that it was completed. Since the so-called historical trajectory has not been changed, and he already knows the truth about the potion's effectiveness, does Shangguan Dandan really want to trap him here to see the reaction of the potion? Sure enough, Lu Sin flew into the sky against the rain line. If you could fly like this in reality, Zhou Dongdong would ride you everywhere to catch birds to eat every day. Lu Chang'an put aside the complicated emotions and teased Zhou Dongdong, which always makes people feel better. Actually, although dogs are not as good as cats, they can occasionally catch birds. Lu Sin stretched his limbs and jumped into the clouds. When we reach the top of the clouds, there is no rain. Instead, we can see a city not far away. Ingot-shaped clouds are pouring down heavy rain. The rain lines are densely packed into columns connecting the clouds and the city. They are also surrounded by water mist. But it was a clear night with a sparse moon and stars, which was also a rare sight. Lu Xin's speed became faster and faster, and in the next moment he broke through the atmosphere and arrived in low Earth orbit. Looking at the Earth and the universe from this angle, it was another majestic feeling full of deep space oppression. Even though he knew it was just a dream, Lu Chang'an was still amazed. This was much more shocking than watching a documentary about space. It seemed that if Shangguan Dandan's ability was used in a proper way, he would have great achievements, but it is a pity that she does not do anything serious day by day. Almost instantly, Lu Xin carried Lu Chang'an out of the solar system and beyond the Kuiper belt. He even saw Pioneer 10 and 11, and Voyager 1 and 2 along the way. Under normal circumstances, flying in such a vast universe, the chance of encountering such a tiny aircraft is zero. What's more, we encountered 4 of them, following Lu Chang'an, and the fastest one among them would take tens of thousands of years to fly out of the solar system. Lu Chang'an quickly left the Orion arm, passed through the Perseus arm and the Outer Edge arm, and reached the edge of the Milky Way. He looked back and saw that the Milky Way was like several male genetic material cells drilling into female genetic material cells. The shape of the huge star structure in the universe is actually similar to a certain scene inherited by mankind. This similarity is really amazing. Soon the local group of galaxies composed of the Large Magellanic Cloud, the Small Magellanic Cloud, the Andromeda Galaxy and the recently departed Milky Way became the cosmic landscape in the Virgo supercluster. It finally took a while to fly away from the Laniakea supercluster, which included 100,000 galaxies. Just when Lu Chang'an wanted to ask Lucine where he was flying to, he saw the center of the vast universe. A sheep. This sheep was extremely huge. It sat on the Great Wall of Corona Borealis, which stretched tens of billions of light years, and looked at Lu Chang'an and Lucine arrogantly. Surrounding this sheep, countless galaxy clusters form the four-character universe. Each word is as big as the Laniakea supercluster, the largest supercluster known so far, but it still seems small compared to this one, because these galaxy clusters are only a few 100 million light-years across. Span. Facing such a behemoth, Lu Chang'an was not afraid at all. He just closed his eyes, out of sight and out of mind. Welcome to the Beam Universe, I am the controller of the Beam Universe, Emperor Beam. The sheep yelled loudly, and the sound caused the surrounding galaxy clusters to vibrate, until Lucine rushed into its body. It was also a large-scale fiber-like cosmic structure composed of countless galaxy clusters. From vastness to insignificance, Lucine soon went from the level of large-scale fibrous cosmic structures to the level of stars and galaxies. He finally saw the vast expanse of land again. The magnificent mountains and rivers were even more beautiful than when he saw Emperor, much more shocking. After all, it feels very real, and when you see Emperor, no matter how big it is not real, just like humans don't feel anything when they see the vastness of the universe described in words, whether it is 100 million light-years or again tens of billions of light. No matter how old it is beyond human concrete ability. Swooping down from the clouds, Lucine's whole body burned, and finally turned into a wisp of blue smoke and drifted away. This made Lu Chang'an understand that it was not that Lucine was dead, but that this meant that this was the final level of the world's best dragon chant formation. He can no longer summon Lucine to leave or take his place, nor does he need Lucine to take him to the next level. This is the last scene, which is probably related to Shangguandandan. Shangguandandan and Zhu Huntang are equally unreliable, but they also have one characteristic. No matter how nonsense they are not completely made up out of thin air. They will give you something more or less real. In other words, in this final in the scene, we should still be able to find out some secrets about Shangguandandan, or some of the origins between her and Lu Chang'an. Lu Chang'an looked around and saw flowers blooming in front of him, a slope covered with swaying green grass arranged neatly like a cage of steamed buns that had just been opened, scattered large branches with lush leaves, and a long river with tumbling waves flowing. The mountains in the distance are undulating, and in the center of many snow-capped mountains with their white crowns exposed above the clouds is a peak that is almost as high as the red sun. This, let alone Earth, even Ria Silvia mountain on Vesta is not as high as the foot of these snow-capped mountains, let alone the highest peak clustered in the center. Lu Chang'an raised his hand and gestured. Mount Ria Silvi is 22.5 kilometers high and is the highest known peak in the solar system. Mount Everest is just a small slope in front of it, and it is no more than a small hill in front of these peaks. It's a small slope. Thinking about how many super-galaxy clusters Lucine had just carried him through most of the universe before entering the core of the universe, this place is naturally not the Earth anymore, and it is normal to have such breathtaking wonders. Putting aside the bad taste of Shangguandandan and Zhu Huntang in the dream, it is actually quite fun to visit the stars and the scenery of other worlds like this. It's just that the scenes Lu Chang'an had experienced were all scenes in his, Sumei and others' memories. So the scene in front of him was Shangguandandan's own memory. Thinking of this, Lu Chang'an became excited. This little bird really came from another world. Where would she be now? What should he do? The task prompt box has not popped up yet. According to general logic, important clues or tasks are often placed in the most eye-catching places. Lu Chang'an looked up at the towering central mountain peak. Just as he was about to take a stroll among the beautiful scenery, Lu Chang'an suddenly heard a loud baa sound. It was Zhu Huntang. Instinctively, he frowned and looked in the direction of the cry. The lamb with its soul imprinted on it was wearing its nightmare suit. It was running towards Lu Chang'an with four hooves and jumping wildly. When he saw the little sheep, was suddenly filled with surprise, and burst into tears. "Daddy, help me." Lu Chang'an stood there without moving. The lamb made a leap and tried to jump on his shoulders, but it used too much force and jumped over his head, rolling down the hillside to the river. The lamb was not injured, and with another squeak of its hooves, it ran up behind Lu Chang'an and stretched its head out from between his legs to look around. "Why?" Before Lu Chang'an could ask, he saw groups of Zhou Dongdong and O running over in the direction where the little sheep had just run. Each of these Zhou Dongdong is as big as a tiger, running wildly on all fours, with two plastic airplane wings on its back, gliding and accelerating in the air from time to time, with its big mouth open in a fierce look. There are probably 10,000 or 8,000 Zhou Dongdong in these mountains and plains. "Run!" Xiaoyang jumped onto Lu Chang'an's shoulders and stood. Lu Chang'an grabbed it and clamped it under his armpit, and ran away quickly. It's not that he thought he couldn't beat it, the key was that he couldn't do it. If there were 10,000 lambs, he would sweep them all away, remove all the wool, and open a mutton processing factory. "What's going on?" Lu Chang'an asked as he ran. "They are Dongdong beasts, holy beasts born in heaven, and the most ferocious existence in the Phoenix dynasty," Xiaoyang explained loudly. "They eat everything, even themselves." Lu Chang'an looked back and saw that wherever those Dongdong beasts went, there was no grass and no trees. Some of them flew into the sky to catch birds to eat, some jumped into the river to catch fish to eat, and some tore them apart. He bit his companion, but there was really nothing left to eat. He raised one leg and stuffed it into his mouth and took a bite. He screamed in pain but did not learn his lesson. He switched to the other leg and continued to eat two more mouths before giving up eating himself. Where is Shangguan Dandan? Lu Chang'an can accept the existence of this kind of holy beast. It is completely reasonable for the Dongdong beast to eat everything. This is Dandan's sealed memory. She can't come in by herself, and she can't interfere with everything that happens here. So if you want to find out her secret, you can only explore slowly by yourself, Xiaoyang said excitedly. "I want to play games like this often in the future." "Weren't you scared to death just now?" Lu Chang'an said angrily. It was understandable to avoid the Dongdong beast, but as a cub of a mythical beast, it was too embarrassing to be frightened like this by the Dongdong beast. "If I'm not scared at all, it means it's not realistic or exciting, so why would I still come to play? Of course, it's because I'm scared to death that I like to play more. Didn't you see that those who play games are all the more food you eat, the more playful you become? Even the abused crying father and mother want to play," Xiaoyang explained confidently. Lu Chang'an turned his head and told her to play if she wanted to. He wouldn't come to play again anyway. "By the way, since Shangguan Dandan can't come in or interfere, what's going on with these Dongdong beasts? Don't tell me that they were born from the heaven of the Phoenix dynasty." Lu Chang'an didn't believe it at all. "Before you came here, didn't you see that this is the beam universe? In the beam universe, since I am the controller, it is the way of heaven. These Dongdong beasts were born from the beam hairs falling off my body. I originally wanted to summon them out and hide here to ambush you, but they didn't listen to me at all," Xiaoyang shouted loudly, and he was really angry. As long as Lu Chang'an was involved in Bai's conspiracy, not many of them could succeed. It seems that even in a dream, claiming to be the controller of the universe does not mean much. The great will of the universe here is still biased towards Lu Chang'an. As expected, only by letting him truly pass the position of the master of the sect to Maya, can he control the universe and do whatever he wants. Lu Chang'an pinched the sheep's ears and pulled them for a while, causing the sheep to yell for a while before letting go. The lamb wanted to plot against him every day, so he beat it every day. This day, It was really a father's love and a daughter's filial piety, and she felt more tender. The Dong Dong beast had been left far behind. Lu Chang'an dropped the lamb on the ground and walked towards the extremely high mountain. "Dad, there are grass everywhere here. It's even prettier than Nanshan pasture. How about you turn into a big fairy sheep and a little fairy sheep and run here together?" The little sheep jumped behind Lu Chang'an, biting off the grass roots and vomiting. When he got on top of him, he nudged him with the horns hidden in his fur, wringing his neck and bouncing around happily. "Dad, I really like you and me together. As long as you take me with you, we will play happily here like real little animals. No one will laugh at us, just the two of us little sheep." He ran up to Lu Chang'an, looked up at him, and accidentally inserted a small 3-petal flower into his nostril. Looking at its pink little mouth, its big black round eyes, which are full of water, the hair on its body gradually grows neatly, and becomes soft and fluffy. Its 4 short little hooves step on the deep fur. Half of his body was submerged in the grass, with his head held high and full of admiration. The sound of "Dad" made Lu Chang'an 100% soft-hearted and unable to bear it. "Then don't tell anyone. After you wake up, you have to go to school well today, and listen to Yan Qing Cheng to make up for classes and finish your homework." Lu Chang'an hesitated for a moment, and had to negotiate some conditions with it, lest it think it was, "If you realize your wish by acting coquettishly, you may be able to act coquettishly and make some unreasonable demands in the future." The lamb jumped around in circles in agreement. Lu Chang'an turned into a mighty dragon goat. I don't know if it was because of this world. The dragon goat's 4 hooves were covered with lightning and thunder, entwined with clouds and mist. The entire sheep's head showed the majesty of a dragon, and his gaze was full of holiness. The lamb opened his mouth and spit out a set of nightmare armor. "What are you doing?" The great immortal sheep looked at the little sheep who was wearing a nightmare armor that looked like a pangolin with a sheep's head. Only the little sheep thought this was a majestic armor. "You should put it on, otherwise you will look like an exhibitionist, and as soon as you lift your legs or stand, I will have the urge to rush over and hit you." Xiao Yang tilted his head, showing a thoughtful expression. "I don't know why. Probably this is the self-consciousness of being a firstborn child, always wanting to eradicate the root cause, lest you give birth to a second child and endanger your status as a firstborn child." The big fairy sheep glared at the little fairy sheep, lowered its head and bumped it with its horns. The little sheep immediately rolled on the grass and laughed, "Ba-ah, ba-ah." The ticklish spot of the little sheep was also on its waist. But what it said made sense. The great immortal sheep scratched a few times with its hooves, and then rolled on the nightmare armor. The black armor automatically unfolded and wrapped around its body. "Hey!" The little fairy sheep, who felt that her father was following her, shouted and ran forward with great excitement. The great immortal sheep quickly followed. 2 sheep are running against the wind. The sunshine and grassland, the fragrance of flowers and the freshness of river water are all the essence of happiness. The little fairy sheep runs around the big fairy sheep, jumps on its back and stands, and falls off from above again. He came down, rolled over, and got up again, and rushed deeper into the grass to hide. With the big fairy sheep following, the little fairy sheep went to find the Dong Dong beast again. This time, the Dong Dong beast did not go berserk and out of control, but followed it. "I am the king of all beasts." The little fairy sheep looked up to the sky and roared. "Oh oh!" The Dong Dong beasts responded to it one after another. The great fairy sheep looked at the scene with an expressionless face. The wind below the mountain raised the corners of its mouth without permission. It raised its head slightly, feeling the purest happiness. The scene of the cubs in front of it and the Dong Dong beasts all over the mountains and fields was so stupid. The little fairy sheep led the Dong Dong beasts to run around again, running from one mountain to another, running along the river to the lower reaches, shouting above the big waterfall, and then running upstream to the bottom of another big waterfall. Shouting, "The holy water shines brightly, the holy water shines brightly, all my disciples, Baa 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 Baa." The holy water shines brightly, the holy water shines brightly, all my disciples, oh. After playing for a while, the little fairy sheep seemed a little tired, and ran to the big fairy sheep and rubbed it. Dad, lick me. No, the big fairy sheep refused without hesitation. It knew that the little fairy sheep made such a request because it just saw two uneaten birds on the tree, pecking each other's hair, and many suckling birds animals like to lick their fur or the fur of their own species. Lick me, the little fairy sheep jumped up again, and then stretched out its tongue to lick the big fairy sheep's chest. The big fairy sheep had no choice but to lick the top of its head. The little fairy sheep squinted its eyes comfortably and turned into a sheep. It was the most fun to transform into sheep together. If they were all humans, that wouldn't work. It felt very perverted. I couldn't stop talking at all. From playing in the fresh morning until dark, the little fairy sheep finally got tired and fell asleep motionless on the back of the big fairy sheep. The big fairy sheep didn't hurry and carried it on its back to find a sheltered cave. He put the little fairy sheep down and held it in his arms, quietly watching it sleep sweetly until dawn. Afterwards, I don't know how much time passed. After walking and playing all the way, Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang finally reached the central peak and jumped to the top. Remember that time we went to play with vampires? Zhu Huntang lay on Lu Chang'an's back and gently hugged his neck. Yeah, Lu Chang'an was deeply impressed. It was one of the few moments in his long life that he would regret, and he shouldn't have taken her there. Later, he personally forced her to admit that she was his fairy sheep. At that time, you actually held me under your crotch and jumped up and down. Damn it, Zhu Huntang thought about it carefully. It was probably because of such an insult that she began to swear that one day she would ride on him instead. The neck is domineering. You've said this twice, Lu Chang'an warned. This is the third time. It's only 3 times. Why are you still going over old scores? Do you think he doesn't regret it? I just feel that the treatment now is completely different. After Zhu Huntang finished speaking, he shouted proudly in his ear, "Baa! Baa! Baa! Baa!" Annoying. No matter how high the mountain is, it cannot touch the distance of the sky. Lu Chang'an finally jumped to the top of the mountain. It turned out to be a regular circular platform, engraved with countless complicated talismans. In the center of the platform, stood a tall and slender woman, and another person was meditating beside her. Young man. It has been many years since the birth of the universe, and central realms like ours are already close to extinction. They will eventually form a land of silence where nothing exists. Galaxies are annihilated. There are no nebulae to breed new planets. There are no elements, and there is not even a trace of dark matter. The woman's voice was cold with a hint of mature magnetism, and her palms were gently placed on the head of the meditating boy. Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang looked at the scene and looked at each other without disturbing them. Yes, the edge of the Bimian Great Wall guarded by Wuxian has begun to be annihilated and spread. Many civilizations have turned into nothingness before they even had time to escape, leaving no traces, as if they had never existed. The young man sighed softly, showing a few traces of it. Sad. It will take some time for annihilation to reach us. We can prepare. The woman raised her head slightly and looked up at the huge star in the distant sky, covering most of the field of vision. This is a star in its teenage years, strong, fresh and full of energy, just like the boy before him. It's just that if a newly born star doesn't live to the end of its life, it will die as the universe gradually dies. This young man will live for a long, long time. How to prepare? The boy asked. The universe has been growing since its birth, and then it will enter a state of partial death and partial rebirth. Our central immortal realm enters the sequence of partial death, and those rebirth locations will take billions or even tens of billions of years. Enter the death sequence. We're going to a new location at the edge of the universe. Well, you go first. The young man raised his head in surprise. Godmother, aren't you coming with me? I still have some things to deal with. and I'll be there soon. After the woman finished speaking, she turned around and glanced at Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang. Look, you and your child. The woman smiled and pointed at Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang and said to the young man. Lu Chang'an opened his eyes and knew that he was awake. At the last moment in the dream, he clearly saw the woman turn her head, and it was the mature Shang Guandandan that he had seen before. As for the young man who was sitting, he never looked back. He didn't know what he looked like, but based on what the woman said, it seemed that he was the Lu Chang'an who lived hundreds of millions of years ago. Is this the sealed message hidden in the deepest part of Shang Guandandan's memory? Lu Chang'an was dubious. Subconsciously, he didn't want to believe it. Shang Guandandan had many tricks. Who knew if this was a new trick arranged by her? To summarize the information obtained, sometime after the birth of the universe, the earliest galaxies began to die, disappearing wherever they went like some kind of infectious disease, but the edges of the universe, that is, locations like the solar system, were still. Just not long after he was born, the woman sent the boy to the solar system, and she arrived later. If the woman is Shang Guandandan and the boy is Lu Chang'an, it means that when Lu Chang'an first arrived on the earth, life had not yet formed on the earth. He also lost his memory during the long journey and began to reconstruct himself along with the evolution of life on earth. The woman's so-called arrival later is actually 3 to 4 billion years late. It wasn't until the recent mythological era that she arrived on earth as a phoenix. As for the time it took to become Shang Guandandan and find Lu Chang'an, it was like a blink of an eye in comparison. This kind of deliberation and information synthesis seems to make sense. The only thing that makes Lu Chang'an think there is something wrong is that the boy in the dream called the woman godmother. This is a bit deliberate. It gives Lu Chang'an the feeling that Shang Guandandan arranged this dream just to let her justifiably prove that Lu Chang'an has been her moth since ancient times and billions of years ago. How can anyone persist in wanting to be a mother for billions of years? Simply, it would take an entire Laniakea supercluster to give birth to such a lunatic level. In this chapter, I would like to thank Dancing Vase for the generous reward, and I finally became the leader. All kinds of requests. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 1101. Lu Chang'an was still lying on the bed. He didn't even kick the bed. The damp and cold feeling in the room became more intense. The pillows and quilts he touched with his hands felt cool and moist, but the quilt was still warm. It reminded him of the lamb sleeping soundly in his dream. The feeling of being in his arms. Although I frown subconsciously when I see a sheep, as long as it doesn't bleat, twist its neck thinking it's cute, jump around sideways, and is quiet, then, I can reluctantly admit that it has a little bit cute. There is still the sound of rain pattering outside the window, but it seems more real. There is no electronically synthesized digital flavor, and it is no longer reminiscent of the sound of oil exploding when frying chicken steak. So much time passed in the dream, but in reality it was only a moment. If the time was synchronized, it would take tens of thousands of years to fly out of the solar system just based on the fastest spacecraft currently built by mankind. As soon as he opened his eyes, he was buried under some ruins or under the Earth's crust caused by the movement of tectonic plates. Humanity had been extinct for countless years, so it would be better to remain in a dream. It's okay now, at least it won't delay Zhu Huntang's class. She was having so much fun in her dream, so she naturally has to study hard when she wakes up. He was not in a hurry to get up and look for Shang Guandandan. In the dream, she discovered that Shang Guandandan came from the central realm of the dead universe. If this was her truly sealed memory, then Shang Guandandan would be the one who was anxious to know. She should be the one who hurriedly came to Lu Chang'an. On the contrary, if she had made up a trick for Lu Chang'an, she would probably have the old god lying there, waiting for Lu Chang'an to go to her to report and analyze, and then take the opportunity to show a pleased and touched look. Look, you were mine countless years ago. Moth, even if you are a being born here on Earth, you are still my moth. This possibility is relatively high. Lu Chang'an suddenly heard the door downstairs being pushed open and Shangwen's footsteps hurriedly heard. Lu Chang'an was stunned for a moment, but he didn't make a conclusion in his heart, because, what if she predicted his prediction? What if she had predicted that he had predicted that she had predicted that of his? Lu Chang'an took a deep breath. Ever since he met Shang Guandandan and Zhu Huntang, he was not far away from becoming a mental patient. Shang Guandandan's footsteps paused for a moment under his window, and then gradually faded away. The sound of muddy pia-pia on the solace of his shoes turned out to be walking out of the community. Lu Chang'an opened the window and took a look. He saw Shang Guandandan in moon-white dark clothes, holding an umbrella in one hand and holding a thermos to his chest with the other. His little body twisted and disappeared into the rainy night. What did she do? She must have something planned. Lu Chang'an felt that it was not easy, but he was not in a hurry. He put on his clothes first and then put on the most comfortable rain boots for rainy days. He found a folding umbrella and followed slowly. The Queen Mother was very weak and had no strength, so she couldn't fly at all, so she pushed an electric car around at most. Now even the electric car was useless, so naturally she couldn't go too far. Lu Chang'an soon saw her on the rainy night. The back looks particularly delicate and small. She seemed to feel a little cold. She shrank the hand holding the thermos flask, pinched a little of the edge of her sleeve with her fingers, and still pressed the thermos flask firmly with her fingertips to prevent it from sliding down. The other hand was close to her chest. It seems that reducing the body's heat dissipation area can keep you warmer. Her long hair was spread down her back, and the tips of her hair were wet and stuck together. They swayed heavily like a pendulum as she tilted her head. Then she walked to a place where there were people lining up, looked forward a few times, and then ran to the queue. The queue started at the end. There were only 4 or 5 people in front of her, so she seemed a little happy. She stepped out of the line and looked in front of her, then looked back and saw that no one was behind her, so she kicked her feet back and mouthed singing the children's songs I learned from Zhou Dongdong. Standing across the street, Lu Chang'an clearly saw 4 ugly calligraphy characters written on a cardboard at the front of the queue: free soy milk. It's not even bright yet, it's dark, and it's raining. She came here just to get free soy milk. The one at the top of the list is the old man with the highest pension in the community. Rank second is Mrs. Lu Chang'an's parent. After old man Qian and old Mrs. Lu got the free soy milk, they stood behind the queue and came to talk to Shang Guandandan. What Lu Chang'an heard was the recent exchange of information about getting things for free. These old men and women had nothing to do all day long, they just loved collecting resources in this area, and they had a spirit of sharing. They would never worry about the number of people going, so they would just get it themselves. If you don't get it or you get less, it's only if you have such a spirit of sharing within your community. When cooperating with old men and women in other residential areas, you must naturally pay attention to information leakage and spying. Soon Shang Guandandan was queued up. Old Qian helped Shang Guandandan hold the umbrella, and Shang Guandandan held her 5L thermos in both hands. The person making soy milk was a middle-aged fat woman. She looked at Shang Guandandan's pot and then at the bucket in front of her. "Little girl, I can't hit you so much." Shang Guandandan just widened his eyes, tilted his head, and stared at the fat middle-aged woman without saying a word, letting her look at the majesty in his eyes. The Queen Mother has always relied on Her Majesty to obtain more free resources. Take as many as you can, there aren't many people today. Old Mrs. Lu stood aside to help Shang Guandandan talk, while shaking her head. Absolutely no one in this world can refuse the little eggs. Little egg is the nickname given to Shang Guandandan by people in the community, because at first Zhou Dongdong called Shang Guandandan's sister Egg, and later everyone called her Dandan, Egg, and Little Egg. If you want it, just give her a 7788 and it will be fine, old man Qian also said. When Shang Guandandan heard someone speaking for him, he happily jumped up and down with his owl in the air. It's just today, next time you come, don't bring such a big pot. The middle-aged fat woman hesitated. I'll pour you a little more than half. She did not open the faucet under the vat to fill it for Shang Guandandan. She casually raised the soy milk vat half a person's height and tilted it forward. The soy milk was accurately poured into Shang Guandandan's jug. Her hand, the force is steady and there is no splash or leakage at all. Soon after filling more than half of the bucket, she put the bucket down. Seeing the middle-aged fat woman's hand, the people in line couldn't help but applaud, and Shang Guandandan was jumping up and down with joy. Lu Chang'an saw that she didn't argue with anyone in the end, so he left quickly. He didn't want Shang Guandandan to find out that he was following her, only to find her queuing up to get free soy milk. Lu Chang'an returned home, shook off the water droplets on his umbrella, then blew air on the umbrella to dry it, then dealt with his rain boots, and still lay in bed. The scene where he just saw Shang Guandandan queuing up, and the residual warmth in the quilt, made him feel a little dazed. Did he really have a very important, real, and informative dream last night? Slowly it started to feel normal. So many memories and experiences in the dream, no matter how shocking or intense the emotions were as dull as the soy milk poured out by the fat woman. Tuk tuk tuk. There was a knock on the door, and Lu Chang'an glanced sideways. Qin Yinan was standing at the door. In the dim light and shadow, her beautiful cheeks, soft arms, and slender legs under the short nightgown all looked particularly white, as if she had hair. It was like light, as if the clouds were parted and the moonlight filled my eyes. Brother, you're awake too? Qin Yinan walked in and leaned her knees against the bed. Were you woken up by Shang Guandandan? Getting up, Qin Yinan stayed overnight last night because he wanted to accompany Shang Guandandan. He looked at Qin Yinan. Shang Guandandan wore loose pajamas, which looked like a sexy style when worn on Qin Yinan. He could not stop his amorous feelings and his temptation. A woman's figure, no matter how beautiful it is just that. After seeing it, it's not surprising. Lu Chang'an doesn't pay attention to this. What he cares about is what Qin Yinan had dreamed about yesterday. What about her dreams? It's not that. When I woke up, I found that she was not in the room, but the small stove was not burning. I was just a little surprised where she had gone. Qin Yinan hugged her soft shoulders with both hands and asked with some confusion, Brother, I heard that men's quilts are generally a little warmer than girls' quilts, is that true? Although some blush appeared on her cheeks involuntarily, Qin Yinan's doubts were sincere. She really didn't know. How could a girl like her, who is still pure and beautiful even after she matures, know such an answer? On the other hand, some girls have spent the night with men countless times and still like to look pure and beautiful. Qin Yinan just thinks that she won't do it. If others like to do it, there is actually no problem. It's like this, so the heat can't leak. Lu Chang'an quickly pulled both sides of the quilt and wrapped it tightly around himself. How could he, a person who was usually so smart, not understand what she meant? Qin Yinan gritted his teeth and raised his leg to kick him. How could a woman do such a thing in a short nightgown? Lu Chang'an was dazzled by the moonlight, recalling Yesijin in his dream, and let go of the quilt. That's pretty much it. Qin Yinan looked back at the living room, closed the bedroom door with caution, and then lay down comfortably on the bed. Brother, I had a dream last night. Qin Yinan was holding the quilt with one hand, only showing half of his face, and the other hand was under the quilt, gently scratching his arm. What dream? Lu Chang'an wanted to know, but he felt a little hot under the quilt. A person's body temperature is about 37 degrees, and two people naturally heat up to more than 70 degrees when they are together. This must be the reason. What I dreamed about was probably about Yesijin. But that was also me. We were watching the fireworks together, barbecuing and drinking next to the clay stove, and then for some reason, you hugged Sume and me together. Qinyanan's voice became softer as she spoke, and she grabbed the edge of the quilt with both hands to cover her face, revealing only a pair of eyes full of shame. Even though the dream was hers, how could he break into her dream and do such a thing? She can do it alone, and she brings Sume with her to bully her. She is simply ashamed of being a brother and sister-in-law, but if the brother is bad, he is still a brother. There is nothing that can be done about it. This sister-in-law has never been accepted by her, and sure enough it is well founded. Wish you all a happy new year and ask for monthly votes. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Siahua. Chapter 1102. Qinyanan is not an unreasonable person. She would have such a dream. Of course, it is because Sume usually gives people the feeling of being unscrupulous, so she left such an impression on her and formed a reflection effect in the dream. I had a dream last night too. Lu Chang'an planned to have a spiritual communication with Qinyanan, but in my dream, when we watched the fireworks together, I discovered that the root of everything was Tesla. This woman is like a poisonous snake, hiding in the darkest corners and peeping. When she sees people losing their minds due to desire and greed, she twists her evil body, spits out disgusting snake bites, and bites the lifeblood of others, killing them. Inject the venom that someone sent to the dead end into it. After Lu Chang'an finished speaking, he sighed softly. In the final analysis, it was Sume who gave Tesla the chance. She was a victim in front of Tesla, but she was also a perpetrator in front of others. It can be called a hateful person with a pitiful aspect that is not enough to reverse the case. For Zhu Huntang's sake, Lu Chang'an no longer cares about anything with Sume, but just feels a little emotional. What he wants to do more now is to go to Antarctica and rub Tesla into ashes. Why is talking the same as writing new poems and articles? Qinyanan could feel his brother's disgust for Tesla and gently patted his chest, but it's so strange. Although the dreams are different, in the dream he had overnight the time, place, and people are all the same. From the arm to the chest, it is a subtle leap, just like a man moving from touching his hand to holding his arms, it is an advancement. Qinyanan was thinking about whether to use a point as a function on his chest, xa, 2 plus, yb, 2 equals r2, but Lu Chang'an held his finger. He turned his head, and Qinyanan couldn't help but blush slightly when she saw the teasing look in his eyes. Even if he guessed something, there was nothing he could do if he didn't admit it. Is there anything strange? Isn't it Shang Guandandan's fault? You did it once last time you stayed overnight, and again last night? You really think I'm your toy, don't you? Lu Chang'an turned over, he held the mattress with one hand and looked at her with his eyes filled with the threat of punishing her. Qinyanan shivered in fear, and moved her hands closer to her chest, huddled together nervously, her body twisted uneasily, pouted slightly, and looked at her with aggrieved eyes full of water and moisture. Miss Zionan is in her 20s this year. What's wrong with wanting a toy? Qinyanan snorted, the blush on her cheeks spread, and climbed to her neck and turned into light pink, but it made it even more attractive, and her collarbone as her breathing slowly rose and fell, she turned her head away, not expecting anything to happen in this ambiguous and intimate moment. She had a dream last night, which was clear and satisfying. Lu Chang'an rolled over her and wrapped her in several layers of quilts, making the scene in front of him resemble the scene in a Qing palace drama where the eunuch wrapped the concubine in a quilt to meet the emperor, and then walked out of the bedroom. Hey, Qinyanan was in embarrassment. A woman wearing imaginative pajamas came to hug her, but she was wrapped up like this. It was a bit unacceptable. If she hadn't already obtained his person and dissipated this frustration, it would have been an unforgettable shame and humiliation. It's probably equivalent to some women who like to pretend to be drunk and then take the opportunity to propose sleeping with someone else, only to be slapped and knocked unconscious. Don't move around, or you'll look like a writhing maggot. Lu Chang'an had seen Zhou Dongdong pretending to be a maggot, and kindly reminded Qinyanan that she most likes to maintain a charming and elegant beauty appearance in front of her brother, and she definitely doesn't want to see that. Looks like maggots. Qinyanan kicked her feet. Sure enough, even though she was a woman with a figure like a mountain stretching out, making people's eyes blurred in the scenery, she was bloated and wrapped in a thick quilt, and the twisting of her body was not tempting at all. Really like maggots. Damn brother, he was obviously crouching in his dream and just wanted to follow her twists. When he woke up, he lifted his pants and refused to recognize her, saying that she twisted like a maggot. Lu Chang'an walked to the living room in a happy mood. It always felt good to punish those naughty children. It's just that Qinyanan, a child, is different from a real child like Zhou Dongdong. Lu Chang'an can't spank casually, so as not to be too elastic and feed back some unnecessary information, causing him to secrete hormones that he doesn't want to secrete at all. Physical abnormalities dominate his body. Turning on the air conditioner to remove the moisture in the living room, Lu Chang'an washed his face and brushed his teeth, and found that Qinyanan was silent in his bedroom. He ignored her, put on his rain boots, and went downstairs with an umbrella. Shang Guanduntun had just come back. She didn't go into the house, nor did she plan to go upstairs. She just stood at the stairs and watched the raindrops dripping from the sycamore tree. You didn't follow me, Shang Guandandan said with some surprise as he looked at Lu Chang'an's spotless rain boots and clean umbrella. Why am I following you? Lu Chang'an rolled his eyes at her, but he finally understood that before Shang Guandandan went out, he stood under his window. In fact, he wanted to make sure that he could find out that she was about to go out, and then trick him. Go stalk her. He did fall into her trap, but fortunately he was not discovered by her and saved a little face. You see, when I got up in the morning, I went to drink half a bottle of free soy milk. Shang Guandandan raised the thermos bottle high and dangled it in front of Lu Chang'an. I am the only one who drinks the most in the community. I feel that I am already the best in the community. People who live a good life. As he spoke, Shang Guandandan kicked the wet toes of his shoes out from under the hem of her skirt, letting him see the Queen Mother struggling to make a living and feeling a little homeless, so that he could learn to be filial to her. You beat him so much. If I were the one delivering the soy milk, I would carry you aside. Lu Chang'an would never be intimidated by the menace in Shang Guandandan's eyes. Shang Guandandan opened his eyes angrily, pulled up his skirt with one hand, and stretched out his foot to trample one of Lu Chang'an's rain boots into dirt. Seeing that his rain boots were dirty and stained with the mud on the soles of her feet, Shang Guanduntun felt a little proud that he was being stepped on by her feet, and he also stepped on his other rain boots dirty. Successfully revenged the unfilial moth, today is another day of victory for the Queen Mother. As expected of Zhu Huntang's good friend and godmother, Lu Chang'an ignored her mental victory and formal revenge. His rain boots would have been stained if he had to go out. Don't you have anything to say about what happened last night? Lu Chang'an said in a calm tone, looking down at her as she continued to step on his rain boots. Last night Yaya and I drank some champagne and talked for a while. I felt a little cold, so I took out the electric blanket given by Dongdong's mother, but it was a little warm again, so I put it away. After getting up, Yaya asked me again about things in Vyang Palace, and I said that in those short 27 days, she was able to ascend to the position of queen all the way with her ambition. After all. Wait. Lu Chang'an raised his hand to cover Shang Guandandan's mouth to stop her from rambling and talking nonsense. Last night Zhu Huntang, and Nuan, Bai Hui, Qinyanan, Su Mei, and others all entered the room. Dreams, you won't say they have nothing to do with you, right? Shang Guandandan lowered his head and stepped on the muddy footprints of his two rain boots. Then he turned his head and looked at him, his big eyes flashing with hazy confusion, his lips were bright red, and the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. Now that you know it's a dream, what are you worrying about when you wake up? Or do you know it's reality, but you still hope it's a dream? There is something zen-like about this. Then do you know what I thought about in the dream? Since a dream is a dream, what you think in the dream should not affect reality. In the dream, Lu Chang'an showed an expression of admiration, but he hesitated to speak. Stopped, shook his head, and walked into the rain holding an umbrella. What were you in your dream? Shang Guandandan asked hurriedly, holding up the edge of his skirt and running a few steps behind. Lu Chang'an did not answer, only the black umbrella fluttered in the rain, swaying into a color like thick ink, smearing on the morning scenery. After successfully countering the routine with Guandandan, today was another day of battle of wits and courage with her and victory. Lu Chang'an walked to the vegetable market and happily decided to buy a few kilograms of mandarin fish. I touched the belly of the mandarin fish, opened my mouth and took a look. I was sure it was a wild mandarin fish caught, so I didn't mind the high price of 65 yuan per pound and just wrapped it up. In this day and age, fish in the name of wild are more expensive. In fact, wild often also means that water pollution is uncontrollable. Farmed fish may eat various hormone feeds, but farmers, for the survival rate of fish, attention will be paid to water pollution issues. It's just that mandarin fish has very high requirements for water quality. In areas with serious water pollution, there are no wild mandarin fish, so you can buy it with confidence. It's just that most people don't know the difference between wild mandarin fish and farmed mandarin fish. The price gap between the two is huge, which also gives some unscrupulous merchants the opportunity to take advantage of the loopholes. Of course Lu Chang'an knew how to distinguish, but he would not refuse others to sell him farmed fish as wild ones. In this way, after he paid, he could kindly feed all the raw fish into the fishmonger's mouth based on the victim's standpoint and help him clear his intestines. Anus, conditioning the body. What we bought today were all wild, so naturally we would not treat the fishmonger like that. Lu Chang'an was strutting through the market carrying several kilograms of mandarin fish. When the citizens saw that this man was buying mandarin fish, they were all wrapped up, and they immediately felt admiration. This is a wealthy family. After buying 3 more salted ducks, a handful of perilla, a bag of crispy peppers, green peppers, eggplants, etc., Lu Chang'an returned home. Qin Yinan didn't know where he was, but he wasn't pretending to be a maggot in his room anymore. Zhou Dongdong took advantage of the fact that his mother was busy in the morning and would not compete with him to play, so he sat behind the electric heating table and played games on the tablet. Lu Chang'an walked over and took a look. It should be a newly downloaded game by herself. The game characters, interface, and game content all showed a temperament that matched her very well. Zhou Dongdong, in fact, we all have health bars just like in the game, but children can't see it yet. Only adults can see it. Lu Chang'an saw the character controlled by Zhou Dongdong rushing towards the edge of the cliff without stopping. His leg fell to death, so he decided to educate her on some things that only adults know. PLGMMP, there are too few MP this month, give me some, the boss will give me some money. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 1103. Zhou Dongdong is a clever child, so she is a little suspicious. Brother Chang'an prevented her from playing games early in the morning and said some strange words next to her. Actually, he wanted her to be helpful. But Zhou Dongdong is also a brave child. A brave child has a strong curiosity and desire to explore the unknown, so he raised his hand and touched the top of his head to see if he could feel his blood bar. The health bar cannot be touched. Lu Chang'an pointed to her game screen. Look at the villain in your game. When he walks around, the health bar is always above his head. When he jumps up, the health bar it's also increased, but it still can't touch the health bar. So that's it? Zhou Dongdong suddenly realized. Then how much blood do I have left in my health bar? Zhou Dongdong was a little worried. If he was beaten every day, would his health bar be reduced a lot? The characters in the game will lose blood when they are beaten. Just after falling under the cliff, the entire health bar disappeared in a whoosh, just like sometimes after Joe Dong Dong was beaten, it felt like the whole child was in pain and could not move. Every time you get beaten, you lose a little blood, but because you eat a lot, you make it up again, and you are still full of blood now. Lu Chang'an took the opportunity to teach, you are already full of blood. When you have breakfast, you will be full of blood. You just need to lick the bones of the salted duck. After all, you know it, right? It's a waste to replenish blood when the blood is full. Didn't the teacher teach you that children shouldn't waste food? Joe Dong Dong slid down from the sofa in shock. Did her mother beat Joe Dong Dong every day to reduce her health bar a little so that she could eat well? Then I'll have to wait for a spanking, otherwise I'll have to lick the bones of the salted duck. In addition to the blood bar, we also have a bar that shows intelligence. The smarter the person, the longer the intelligence bar. Lu Chang'an put down the dish in his hand, opened his hands and raised them to indicate how long his intelligence bar was. Joe Dong Dong also got up and raised his hands, looking up at his invisible intelligence bar. Then is my intelligence bar as long as the Great Wall? Why didn't you say that you could circle the equator? Lu Chang'an admired her confidence very much. No, to be more precise, he admired her state of mind that was still so firm and stable despite being repeatedly hit by reality. The ground was the same as her motionless body in the typhoon of Category 18. Of course I'm late for a round. Equator, forget it. I mean, from what I've seen, your intelligence bar is now showing a negative number. What is a negative number? It's smaller than 0. Your intelligence bar has dropped out and you have no intelligence. Why? Joe Dong Dong looked at Lu Chang'an in disbelief. How could this clever and brave child lose his intelligence? Couldn't she say that she is a smart and brave child in the future and become a smart and brave child, but the smart and brave child no longer sounds impressive. Every time you come last in a test, your intelligence bar will drop a little. Every time you do something stupid, your intelligence bar will drop a little. If you play too many games and always play on mobile phones and tablets, your intelligence will also drop a little. If you don't do your homework, I don't memorize poems, I will forget the knowledge I learned in class after class, and my intelligence will lose a little bit. Lu Chang'an stretched out his finger and gestured, look, can you not button it up? Joe Dong Dong was stunned for a moment, raised his head and opened his mouth, looking at his invisible negative intelligence bar. He burst into tears and rushed home to find Zhou Shuling. Mom, I have no intelligence. Lu Chang'an was in a happy mood. He picked up the dishes on the table and prepared to clean the mandarin fish. Half of it would be braised and the other half would be used to make stinky mandarin fish for Zhou Dong Dong to eat. She had never forgotten the feeling of eating shit. To sum up, I successfully reversed the routine of Shangguan Dandan early this morning and taught Zhou Dong Dong to play less electronic products and games. As long as he waits and drives Zhu Huntang to school later, it will basically be a successful day. We will meet again at other times. If anything goes wrong, I won't care much about it. He chopped off the beaks and wingtips of 3 salted ducks, peeled off the main skeleton, and then tore them into small pieces and piled them into a bowl. When he was about to make another preserved egg with chili pepper, Zhou Shuling came to the kitchen and beat him several times. I teased her early in the morning, and she came to bother me. I was studying in the morning. Zhou Shuling felt that she had gradually found the feeling of studying. When she was a child, she often heard the teacher say that the best plan for the day is in the morning, and morning is the best time for studying. When it rained last night, and she felt a little cold when she woke up in the morning. There was probably too much moisture in the air, which made Zhou Shuling feel that her bed was also wet. When she got up in the morning, she quickly changed her clothes, pants, and sheets, and then hurriedly read a book to dilute it. The meaning of spring seems to sprout in my heart as the rain seeps into the soil. Take a lesson, Lu Chang'an said with a pun, not only teasing her for always following Shang Guandandan to do things that were not good for mother-in-law and daughter-in-law, but also showing that he was not optimistic about her academic prospects. I want to be admitted to Hunan University with Dong Dong. Just like those parents in the news who go to college with their children, if others can do it, I will definitely do it if I work hard. Zhou Shuling said confidently that when she was a child his academic performance seems to be very good, at least much better than Zhou Dongdong. He has never been among the bottom 10 in the class. I told you a long time ago that if you can get into Hunan University, I will eat all the furniture and appliances at home. Lu Chang'an didn't believe it at all. If Zhou Dongdong really couldn't get into university, he would always think you can think of a way, donating money and materials, or being specially recruited through achievements in sports and arts. As for Zhou Shuling, getting into college is purely a matter of emotion, so of course it only makes sense if she works hard on her own. It doesn't matter if she fails the exam, she has something to rely on in her life anyway. Zhou Shuling angrily hit him a few more times. Feeling the strong muscles of his arms, her mind couldn't help but think of his usual shirtless appearance, so she hit him harder and harder. Then her fingers gradually became weak while pinching the edge of the sleeves, and she lowered her hands. Interlocking fingers. By the way, your intelligence is also negative. If you don't believe me, take a look at your intelligence bar, Lu Chang'an said while removing the heads and seeds from the green peppers. Zhou Shuling was a little lost in thought, and subconsciously followed the movement of his head to look at the top of her head. She immediately reacted and said angrily, "It's disgusting. I heard that if you always say that a person is fat, she will really know how to do it getting fat." Dong Dong and I mean Dong Dong's studies are not good. Is it because we often talk about her? You got the cause and effect wrong. Not to mention teaching in accordance with their aptitude. Some children are sensitive and think too much. When educating, you must pay special attention to wording, tone and all aspects. Zhou Dongdong is an insensitive type. This is a big problem. A heart is also necessary to become a great person, but at the same time, if you don't talk to her, she won't realize what shortcomings and deficiencies she has. Lu Chang'an explained that he also educated Zhou Shuling on the basics of parenting. So that's it? Zhou Shuling suddenly realized. Is Xiao Tang also the insensitive type? Zhou Shuling is now very familiar with Zhu Huntang, and no longer calls her Miss Zhu politely. She has a good impression of Zhu Huntang, but she also knows that Zhu Huntang has what she did was even more incomprehensible than what Zhou Dongdong did. Her? She's the type who deserves a beating. Lu Chang'an got angry as he spoke. Puff. Watching Zhou Shuling smile and tremble, the little woman's warm body fragrance lingers in the cool air after the rain. It seems that her body is as warm as her breath. It can warm people's hearts. Did you dream last night? Although Lu Chang'an did not see Zhou Shuling in last night's dream, it was almost impossible to miss her most beloved daughter-in-law because of Shandan Dandan's recognition and preference for Zhou Shuling. It is very possible that Zhou Shuling also had a dream, but Lu Chang'an did not perceive it, just like Qinyan's dream last night was different from what Lu Chang'an perceived. Ah, how do you know? Zhou Shuling's eyes were full of panic, like the reflection of a lake trembling. She pressed the hem of her red woolen skirt with both hands, as if she wanted to hide something, but it just seemed that she was helpless. 300 taels of silver. Lu Chang'an shook his head, but did not ask what her dream was. It was reasonable for Miss Yao Nan, who was in her 20s, to want a toy, let alone a daughter-in-law who was 1 year older than Miss Yao Nan. In the dream, whatever Zhou Shuling did was allowed, and whatever she got was allowed. Lu Chang'an had no objections. Shang Guanduntan was not the only one who had a preference for such a warm, caring, and pitiable little daughter-in-law. I'm making preserved pepper eggs this morning. Where's the bowl? Lu Chang'an smiled and scratched her head, motioning her to look for it. However, he entered the kitchen less than she did, and some things were left where she was used to. Location. Zhou Shuling hurriedly squatted down, bent down to search in the cupboard, and took out the hammer made from a whole piece of natural bluestone. The pestle was really so strange. Why haven't I felt like this before? Zhou Shuling shook her head quickly and secretly looked at Lu Chang'an. He couldn't possibly know what he was dreaming about, but he also doubted Lu Chang'an's usual omniscient appearance. If he had guessed what he had dreamed, it didn't seem to be the case. Impossible. To make preserved pepper eggs, you need to remove all the seeds from the green peppers. When frying, you must add more oil, otherwise the green pepper skin will be burnt and the inside will not be cooked. Lu Chang'an picked up the pestle and looked at it, and stuffed it into Zhou Shuling. In your hands, wash and scrub it clean. Zhou Shuling was holding the pestle, but suddenly her hands seemed to be burned. She pushed Lu Chang'an with a blushing face and ran out of the kitchen. Lu Chang'an watched Zhou Shuling run away, her back like the willow branches swaying in the spring breeze, and then looked at the pestle that fell on the ground. Did this little wife dream about the pestle last night? This can be played for fun. Look. It's the end of the month, please give me a monthly pass. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 1104. Zhou Shuling left the kitchen, and Lu Chang'an had to do it himself, carefully cleaning the hammer and pestle. Libo is mostly used at the junctions of Hunan, Guizhou, Sichuan, Guangxi, Hubei, Jiangxi and other places. What is very amazing is that these provinces are indeed used more at the junctions, while relatively less in other places. It is almost identical to the garlic mortar commonly used in the north and the mortar and pestle in traditional Chinese medicine stores, and its functions are completely similar, but it seems to be a little different if it is the same thing. For example, the pestle of a mortar is generally longer than the hammer of a garlic mortar. It does not imply that the ones used by southerners are longer than those used by northerners. Mix the fried peppers, preserved eggs, and minced garlic with light soy sauce, balsamic vinegar, add a little salt and mash the steamed eggplant to make a spicy and not greasy pepper preserved egg, especially with rice appetizing. Zhou Dongdong, who was still bleeding, rushed into the kitchen with Lucine, licking his lips and staring at the chopped salted duck with soy sauce on the plate. She has been beaten today and is not full of health. She can eat a lot of salted duck instead of licking the leftover duck bones. Brother Chang'an, can you see that my health bar has dropped a little? After Zhou Dongdong finished speaking, his mouth opened wide because Brother Chang'an stuffed the egg whites left over from making the preserved pepper eggs. Well, some have fallen off. Just like eating, you only need to be 70% full, but your health bar doesn't have to be full. Lu Chang'an looked at it carefully and told her the real-time status of the health bar. Zhou Dongdong chewed the preserved eggs with confidence. She only heard the blood bar drop a little. As for eating only 70% full, Zhou Dongdong had no idea what it meant. Lu Chang'an fed the preserved egg yolk to Lu Sin again. Lu Sin liked to go into the kitchen, because when Zhou Shuling was in the kitchen, she would feed Lu Sin while cooking. As a result, this Rottweiler, which was already particularly powerful and majestic, could no longer be seen. It has the characteristics of a Rottweiler, more like a fat black tiger or a black blind man. But it obviously didn't realize this. Every time it went to pick up Zhou Dongdong and arrived outside the school early, it would still hide behind the green belt. However, its enlarged size could no longer really hide it. Instead, it became more eye-catching, always attracting passers-by. Go over and take a look at what's nesting there. Fortunately, the school guards and teachers all know that this is Zhou Dongdong's dog. He is often picked up and thrown by primary school students, but he just walks away sullenly. He never barks or makes threats. He also helps when passers-by provoke him. To persuade him to leave, touch the dog's head to comfort it. Lu Sin swallowed the preserved egg yolk in one gulp, stretched out his tongue and licked Lu Chang'an's ass. Lu Chang'an suddenly remembered Lu Xin's appearance in the dream, and glanced at its oily fur and stubby limbs with a complicated expression. He wasn't going to ask it if it had a dream last night. Even if a dog could remember the scene in its dream, would it feel a lot disappointed because of the contrast between reality and dreams? Zhou Dongdong, do you think there is something wrong with your mother? She beat me first, and then went downstairs to beat me. Lu Chang'an felt that she was a bit too arrogant and would hit anyone. Shouldn't there be just one? She would hit whoever she thought was wrong, but in the end she hit both of them, which made Lu Chang'an seem to be happy to help others. My mother also fights with you during the day. Zhou Dongdong stared at the salted duck in confusion. Songdazi said her parents only fight at night. Lu Chang'an felt something was wrong, but there was no way he could discuss this topic with Zhou Dongdong. How about next time you pick up Zhou Dongdong and meet Songdazi's mother, why don't you remind her? It's not easy to talk, as he is suspected of teasing a woman from a good family. By the way, the correct thing to do is to talk less to Zhou Dongdong, so Lu Chang'an took a sauced duck leg and blocked Zhou Dongdong's mouth. Zhou Dongdong waved his hand, swinging his body like a tumbler from left to right. While biting the duck leg in his mouth, he understood that Brother Chang'an felt embarrassed because he had fought with his mother during the day. When breakfast was ready, Shang Guandandan opened the living room door and appeared at the dining table on time holding a big thermos. She did not open the thermos pot immediately and share breakfast with everyone. Instead, she waited until Zhou Shuling came downstairs. Then she showed a little bit of hard work and explained to Zhou Shuling, I went to a faraway place early in the morning to get a free taxi. The soy milk saves money, energy, and time in making breakfast. It allows you to focus more energy and time on your work or study, which is conducive to the long-term development of the family. It's still raining this morning. Zhou Shuling looked out the window, quickly opened the lid of the pot, poured a cup of soy milk for Shang Guandandan to drink, and said with some embarrassment, I can't even get up. Lu Chang'an said he wanted me to drink more, take a nap, and he'll make breakfast. I didn't expect you to be so diligent, Dandan. I think I'm getting lazy. That's not true. Shang Guandandan still recognized his most beloved daughter-in-law. She was as hard-working and virtuous as himself, a traditional woman who lived a smart and frugal life. She nodded with satisfaction. You usually run between the store and home. I should also share some housework appropriately. This is just what I can do. Lu Chang'an looked at the harmonious and warm scene between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law and knew very well that Shang Guandandan waited until Zhou Shuling came downstairs before he started talking about what she said. Because only Zhou Shuling here would support her, and even Zhou Dongdong knew that Sister Dandan couldn't do any housework except boiling water. Of course, Lu Chang'an won't say anything. The Queen Mother came back with free soy milk for you to drink early in the morning. If she still beeps, it would be a bit ungrateful. She gave death 2,000 years ago, but she cannot give death today 2,000 years later. But she will keep staring at you with majestic eyes, so it's better not to provoke her. In short, if you take positive actions, you should give positive feedback. Lu Chang'an drank 2 more cups of soy milk to express his appreciation. What is this? Shang Guandandan looked at the preserved egg with pepper a little doubtfully. This dish was not the color of a normal dish at all. It looked like a bunch of messy things that had been hammered and mixed together randomly. The preserved egg with peppers is quite delicious. It's not something he used to frame you, Zhou Shuling said with certainty. Although Zhou Shuling also tricked Shang Guandandan into eating blood sausage, she still gained Shang Guandandan's favor. Shang Guandandan tasted it with confidence and nodded. It tasted pretty good. Does this thing look like? The preserved pepper egg was placed in the bowl, and the pestle was also placed inside. Shang Guan pointed at it, and couldn't remember it for a while, so he glanced at Zhou Shuling. Ah, no. It's just a pestle, it looks nothing like it, Zhou Shuling said in a panic. She felt like she had a strange and messy dream last night. Everyone seemed to know her dream today. The content is spoken as if it means something. It's like a punishment we used to have. The leader of the feudal ruling class who regarded the people as mustard finally remembered, make a stone mortar 100 times the size of this bowl, put the sinners into it, and then use several people to drive it. A huge wooden pestle was pounded in the mortar, and at first people could be heard screaming, but the screams gradually became inaudible. "It's time to eat," Lu Chang'an knocked Shang Guandandan on the head. "Is this something that can be said when eating breakfast, especially when eating preserved eggs with red pepper?" Zhou Shuling breathed a sigh of relief, as long as Shang Guandandan didn't say that Lei Chu is like Lu Chang'an, and Zhou Shuling is like Lei Bo. "This gave me some inspiration for managing the harem." Shang Guandandan touched his head with one hand to prevent Lu Chang'an from banging his head, and continued, "In the future, we can play games in the harem and make a huge, soft, and comfortable one with inner walls." The quilt was attached to the big bowl, and Xiaoling, Yaya and others were thrown into it. Lu Chang'an was used as a pestle, and I tied him with my hair and threw him into it. Bang bang, bang bang, I'll let you bang bang. Lu Chang'an took the chopsticks and hit Shang Guandandan on the head. "If you don't eat well, you'll just talk nonsense." Shang Guandandan yelled yet to dodge a few times, and simply sat next to Zhou Shuling. He didn't take Lu Chang'an's strong objection seriously. Men are like this. They yelled no, but then they just wanted to play. This plan was so clever that Shang Guandandan decided to discuss with Zhu Huntang to formulate and implement such a plan. Zhu Huntang's enthusiasm was so high that he could take off from the spot. Dong Dong, who was seriously replenishing his blood during the residual blood week, had no sense of presence during the entire breakfast. After breakfast, Zhou Dongdong and Lu Xin went to school. Shang Guandandan wandered around the community as usual, preparing to discuss with her friends whether to stay in Aunt Xia's canteen and play cards today, or to look for new resource collection locations. Lu Chang'an and Zhou Shuling walked towards Beilong Center together. The short journey always made Zhou Shuling's mouth curl up slightly, but today there were more pink and green colors in the cool morning breeze, dyeing her originally fair and soft cheeks. Superior. The little woman's gentle and charming expression made the neighbors sigh. How could the breakfast stall proprietress, who was up early and stayed up late last year, become so alluring? At first, when I saw her running a breakfast stall and flipping her hair from time to time, she had some of the virtuous and charming temperament unique to a traditional good-natured woman, but now she has that moist and gentle look, which makes people who have known her a little bit shy. No more eyes. The two of them separated downstairs in Beilong Center. Lu Chang'an still had to catch Zhu Huntang to attend class. Although she promised well in her dream last night, Zhu Huntang might very well have excused herself for skipping classes on the grounds that it was talking in her sleep. Of course, there is nothing reasonable to say to Zhu Huntang. She is full of nonsense when she opens her mouth. Just send her to class directly without saying a single unnecessary word. Miss Third hasn't woken up yet. Seeing Lu Chang'an, Zhong Qing was a little embarrassed, and then looked at him with a normal expression, but there was some unclear amorous feelings hidden deep in his eyes. Not awake yet? Well, I've been talking in my sleep. I don't know what's going on. I can't wake up even if I call. Zhong Qing continued to report. It's a new month, please click on the word next month ticket, thank you. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 1105. There was still a long way to go from the door to Zhu Huntang's bedroom. Lu Chang'an was not used to walking on a balance bike like Zhu Huntang did, so he and Zhong Qing walked slowly over. Did she pretend not to wake up on purpose? Lu Chang'an asked. He was not worried that something was wrong with Zhu Huntang and that he could not wake up from last night's dream. Shang Guandandan only enjoyed framed Lu Chang'an, and loved her goddaughter and daughter-in-law very much. Shang Guandandan has two goddaughters, one is Zhu Huntang and the other is Zhou Dongdong. Only Zhu Huntang can call her godmother, while Zhou Dongdong calls her sister Dandan. When Shang Guandandan wants to do mischief, he usually chooses Zhu Huntang as his partner. Normally, he takes Zhou Dongdong to wander around with nothing to do, and then looks for gangsters. Opportunity to eat and drink? Probably not. Usually when the third lady pretends to be asleep, she just closes her eyes tightly, and then rolls around on the bed. If she is tickled, she can't help but sit up and laugh. Zhongqing shook his head. We have tried the tickling technique, but we don't dare to wake her up in any other way. Her condition seems to be similar to sleepwalking. It is said that sleepwalkers cannot wake her up suddenly. Prone to problems. I'll go take a look. Lu Chang'an nodded. He felt that Zhu Huntang was more likely to play last night's dream as a game. Anyway, when she encountered such absurd things, she would be particularly excited and happy, and she would not be in a hurry at all. Out of the dream, wake up and go to school. What he wanted to know was that in the dream last night, the woman said something back and met Lu Chang'an, and he was pushed out of the dream by a force majeure. When he woke up, he didn't know what happened to Zhu Huntang at the time. Now it seems that she is still in a dream, so what will she say and do to that woman and boy? Where's her mother? Didn't you come to see her? Lu Chang'an asked next. My wife also had a long dream last night. She woke up relatively late and was taking a shower and changing clothes. Zhongqing had a good grasp of the situation in both buildings, and immediately showed some shy doubts. Why did so many people have long dreams in one night? When I woke up, I checked the WeChat moments and found that Bai Hui said that she had a dream. Once you wake up from the dream, you will never be able to sleep again. Lu Chang'an knew that this was all caused by Shang Guandandan. How could she let so many people enter the dream world at the same time? If you bring these people together and use some external instruments, auxiliary drugs, and various means to stimulate them, you may be able to make them all have similar dreams. To allow all participants to enter the same dream world while being dispersed in different locations over a wide range, the current level of science and technology is incapable of doing so. Even Sumei, who had mastered the technological civilization of the previous era, probably couldn't do it. Shang Guandandan is indeed a little old lady who cultivates immortality. What dream did you have last night? Lu Chang'an asked with a normal expression. He could guess that Sumei's dream was probably similar to Qin Yinan's. At most, it was based on personal memory, feelings, emotions, and personality, with some deviations. The themes of dreams may be those things that have been turned upside down. Ah, it's nothing. Zhongqing shook his head like a rattle, raised his hand to pinch the button on his chest, but nervously opened one button, and found that his eyes had glanced over inadvertently, and the white and tender skin on his chest was filled with, there was a layer of redness that looked like sunburn, and I quickly pinched the collar. Note 1. My eyes are poisonous. Or does it have a burn effect? Lu Chang'an tilted his head and looked at Zhongqing doubtfully. Usually after drinking some wine, he would dare to take off his clothes and throw himself into his arms. If nothing happened, he would send him a selfie with his clothes gradually getting thinner. Now he just a casual glance and this reaction? It's not that. Zhongqing looked at his slightly hurt expression and couldn't help but laugh out loud. He released the palm that was covering his chest. Anyway, it was not a very open standard. It was still within the normal norms of professional dress. Actually, it's my own problem. I dreamed about you last night. In the dream, I was still a little girl, chasing you to call you godfather, and then you ran to my house, killed my dad, and then occupied us. With the meager wealth at home, we threw all the relatives who came to look for trouble into the Xiangjiang River. Is this the image I have in your mind? According to Zhongqing's previous description, Lu Chang'an felt that killing her father was not too much, but he never occupied other people's property, unless their ancestors owed money. The descendants refused to admit it. Absolutely. Zhongqing smiled and brushed away the hair hanging down by her ears with her fingers. There was also some tender pink color spreading at the base of her ears. A mature professional woman, with exquisite makeup and dress, was a little shy. But she reveals an overflowing charm. Her one-step skirt tightly hugs the curves of her lower limbs, and her infinite charm when walking around is enough to make people understand why there are so many irresistible temptations and cheating in the workplace. The fact that he was beating and killing her in her dream was not enough to make her shy when she saw him when she woke up. The key was that he locked a certain relative who came to her door with Zhongqing in the cellar. This is a bit absurd and unacceptable. Her relative seemed to have got what he wanted. He was very excited about the cellar life that he had been looking forward to for a long time. He claimed that he was a grasshopper and should be held by him with a rope and raised in the cellar. In the cellar. Lu Chang'an didn't ask further questions. These women were dreaming. Anyway, they couldn't dream of anything that fit his image of being lofty, virtuous, upright, and elegant. The two of them stopped in front of Zhu Huntang's bedroom. 5 maids bent down to salute. They had put on seasonal grass-green midi skirts and colorful Katiosha-made hats. They looked down at Lu Chang'an's reflection on the floor. A slender figure. Zhongqing waved his hand, and they left with various objects to serve Zhu Huntang when he got up. Lu Chang'an stood in front of the door made of a large irregular display screen, which was playing a video of a lamb holding a dragon horn and yulong. And the line of animation video. I remember that what used to be played on this kind of display screen were all kinds of portraits of her as a normal human being faced with Yangtze's ambition. Lu Chang'an was very restrained and did not open the door. She couldn't change into a giant dragon and travel with the little white dragon. Animation. You have to sit on his head and dominate him, right? It's just an animation, don't argue with her. Zhongqing consoled her. Fortunately, Lu Chang'an and the third wife were very human beings. Parents of ordinary families would probably have been frequent visitors to the ICU. Lu Chang'an walked to the door, and just as he raised his hand, a doll lamb suddenly jumped out from the flowers nearby, then pressed its horn into a hole beside the door and inserted it. After hearing a baa sound, the doll lamb suddenly jumped out of the flowers nearby. The sheep bleated loudly and pushed the door open. You just changed the door opening method? What crazy door lock manufacturer would produce this kind of door? This is not the first time Lu Chang'an came to Zhu Huntang's bedroom. Before, it was a normal sensor door controlled by an intelligent system. There is a department under the secretary's office that specializes in making various toys and application equipment for the third lady. They make all those spray balancing cars, aircraft, emotion sensing doll clothes, etc. Zhongqing explained. They are quite free, so generally as long as the third lady's idea is not too sci-fi, they can quickly make it and replace it. Lu Chang'an nodded. He was a kind-hearted person and walked into the bedroom resisting the thought of making everyone in this department unemployed. When she came to the bedside, Zhu Huntang was wearing a set of bleeding pajamas, lying among the pillows and quilts that she had kicked into a mess, like a big plush doll. There was a sheathed dagger under her headrest. Why is she putting a dagger under the pillow? Lu Chang'an frowned and looked at Zhu Huntang. She had no reaction to Lu Chang'an and Zhongqing walking in. She closed her eyes tightly and looked as shown in the picture. Because on the surface she is a martial arts supreme who has retired from the martial arts world, but in fact she is a shark hand. And like a little bear like Cao, she likes to kill people in her dreams, so she puts a knife under her pillow to show her professional status and alertness. Zhongqing also asked Guo Huntang did not laugh when he relayed this question to Lu Chang'an truthfully. Lu Chang'an took aside the knife that Zhu Huntang used for precaution and pushed her gently. Bah! This sect leader leads a billion dong beasts to rule the BAA universe, bleeding Koreans wherever he goes. Zhu Huntang started talking in his sleep. The Phoenix dynasty is just a small fish-ball country occupying a land of one fish. Huh? Why does this tiger look so much like Daddy? I want to ride it. There will no longer be a Phoenix dynasty on this continent. From now on this place will be called the Bimia dynasty. She was yelling, laughing sometimes, and making majestic declarations at other times. just like she was immersed in a dream with her eyes closed tightly. Lu Chang'an listened to her talk about Phoenix Dynasty in her sleep. Sure enough, after meeting the woman in the dream, he was the only one who was excluded from the dream, while Zhu Huntang was still going crazy there. "If you don't wake up, I will take Yan Qingcheng to the amusement park," Lu Chang'an said in a low voice. Zhu Huntang suddenly sat up, his eyes widened, and he glared at Lu Chang'an. "I want to go too." "Where are you going? Why are you going? Get up quickly, you'll be late later," Lu Chang'an said angrily. Others pushed her and called her, but she didn't respond. When she heard Yan Qingcheng's name, she became very wary and even bleated. No matter what the universe, the army of billions of Dong beasts, or the Baa dynasty are, they still want to hinder him and others from being a loving father and a daughter. "Old man," Zhu Huntang patted the bed and bounced a few times. He wanted to pounce on Lu Chang'an and bite him, but Lu Chang'an poked him back with his finger. He had to sit on the bed without any momentum and issued threats and warnings. You just said you were going to take so-and-so to the amusement park, did you just want to wake me up? If you really go and don't take me with you, I will run to Antarctica and become a lonely, cold, and arrogant pygmy, never to return to the county again. It's Sandy." Lu Chang'an's mind couldn't help but picture a young Blee walking on the ice and snow on the Antarctic continent, which was deserted and there were not even many living creatures. The figure was getting farther and farther away in the violent snowstorm and was almost invisible. He shook his head. He couldn't become the kind of daughter slave who shed tears whenever he thought of his daughter suffering a little loss. Seeing that she woke up, Zhongqing called a servant to help Zhu Huntang get up, and then walked outside the door with Lu Chang'an to wait. "Have you seen that Zhu Huntang is actually more like me, with a gentle and kind nature, which is completely different from your third wife," Lu Chang'an analyzed in a calm tone. "Why do you say that?" Zhongqing felt that Zhu Huntang did have a good heart, but how did she show it just now? Usually she always yells that I can only take her and do whatever she wants with her, but just now I said I wanted to take Yan Qingcheng to the amusement park even though she was the most wary about it. All she blurted out was to take her with me. The threat she made was only that she would run away, not what she would do to Yan Qingcheng. This is very different from the choice her mother would make under the same circumstances. Zhongqing nodded. That was indeed the case. So was this the biological father who truly loved his daughter? Even if his daughter is usually so angry that he jumps and has a brain hemorrhage, as long as he can find something worthy of praise about his daughter, he will smile and look satisfied. Looking in the direction of the bedroom, Zhongqing smiled slightly. He never expected that he would feel a lot of envy for Zhu Huntang from such an angle. Who wouldn't want a father like this? It's a pity that even in the dream, he is just his godfather, and he is still kind of immoral. Note 1, in chapter 48, Welcome, it is mentioned that Zhongqing is prone to stress reactions due to the gaze of others. There are small details that few readers will remember, which fully illustrates the author's intention and meticulous work. It is worthy of a monthly vote. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I'm really immortal. Author, Chulian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 1106. Various educations for future generations are one of the characteristics of higher-level creatures. The old fox will throw the dead mouse to the young fox, let them fight with each other, and train their competitive habits. Then use injured mice to train them to deal with, chase, and kill prey. Finally, take the little fox to look for traces of wild prey. The tiger will let the cub hide in the grass and watch the whole process from approaching to killing the prey. The cub will also be particularly attentive, studying every move of the tigress. The cheetah attaches great importance to physical fitness and efficiency training. It teases the cubs with its tail and trains them to move quickly and attack continuously and efficiently. Lu Chang'an would beat Zhu Huntang if he had nothing to do, and then drag her to school out of wits. I can think of so many excuses and things to skip class every day. You should praise me for my wit. After Zhu Huntang freshened up, he sat in the dining room in the bedroom. Today was another day where he failed to skip class. The air was filled with the smell of defeat, and she had to find some reasons to cheer up. Always having no choice but to succumb to his lust would make Zhu Huntang depressed and lose his fighting spirit. Starting today, Zhou Dongdong has admitted that she has no intelligence, and you are almost no longer qualified to use the word wit. The word wit has always been a good word in the history of the Chinese language. It wasn't until Lu Chang'an met Zhou Dongdong and Zhu Huntang that he realized that the meaning of this word began to slowly become distorted. Especially sometimes Zhu Huntang is pronounced as Jitsi on purpose. Ha ha ha. Thinking of Zhou Dongdong, Zhu Huntang suddenly felt happy, but the feeling of I am still smarter than Zhou Dongdong made her a little depressed. Under Lu Chang'an's long-term attack, the proud, beautiful, peerless and independent fairy was reduced to relying on comparison with a first-grade primary school student to gain a sense of superiority. So Zhu Huntang rolled his eyes and looked at Zhong Qing, deciding to tease the little vixen who exuded an elite feminine temperament, to regain some confidence from Zongqing's panic when she was teased by her. Qing Qing, did you dream last night? Zhu Huntang couldn't invade everyone's dreams, but she and Shang Guandandan had discussed it, so she naturally knew who would dream. Zhong Qing was mixing juice for Zhu Huntang. When he heard this question, his heart skipped a beat. He loosened his wrist and almost dropped the cup. He quickly raised his head and glanced at Zhu Huntang. The third lady had seen through her expression. Dreams are a bit shameful, but if she doesn't tell her, how can others know about her dreams? It's just strange that Lu Chang'an and Zhu Huntang both knew that she had a dream last night. You must have dreamed about Xiaoyao Mountain and Forest with Lu Chang'an. Zhu Huntang stared at Zhong Qing's expression and confirmed this. These women who have no pursuits only covet Lu Chang'an's body and have low and obscene thoughts in their minds. If people's desires are exposed, they will easily be controlled, guided, and manipulated by others, and they will fall into the traps of others without knowing it. Zhu Huntang is such my Ima who is good at understanding the desires of others to realize his own conspiracy. Smiling proudly of the forest, Lu Chang'an frowned. Although he felt that Zhu Huntang was like a sheep and could not spit out dragon's teeth, but because he had pure thoughts and elegant taste, he was not full of dirty jokes and could not figure out Zhu Huntang's true nature for a while. What you want to say? He didn't care either. Being able to understand what Zhu Huntang said right away was something he had to be careful about. It meant that his mind was about to be contaminated by her bleeding aura. What? Zhong Qing breathed a sigh of relief, sounding as if she had not guessed the content of her dream. She adjusted her mood, showed her usual light and reserved smile, continued to mix the juice for Zhu Huntang, and handed it over. Because the fox pretends to be the tiger's power and does the accounting for the tiger, I often use tiger to refer to Lu Chang'an, and little vixen to refer to you. Tigers and foxes are both species that like to hang out in the mountains and forests when you are whipped and howled by the tiger. Of course it's Xiaoyao Mountain Forest. After Zhu Huntang finished speaking, he couldn't help laughing. Being able to tease people so humorously and implicitly showed that he was very witty. The trace of decadence that Zhu Huntang had just felt was instantly wiped away, and his determination to fight Lu Chang'an for a long time was revived. If Zhou Shuling hadn't been taught just 2 days ago that the child should not be beaten or scolded while eating, Lu Chang'an would have taken action now. Hurry up and finish your meal. Lu Chang'an also smiled. Zhu Huntang looked at Lu Chang'an's expression carefully and couldn't help but slow down his breakfast. He wondered whether he should hide 2 drums under his skirt later so that he could see the drums. He couldn't help but play a drum song or something, thus forgetting to did she beat her butt until it was swollen? Third miss, how do you know what other people dream about? Zhong Qing finished speaking, but then explained in a panic, I didn't mean that I dreamed about the Xiaoyao Mountain Forest. Zhong Qing did not dream about Xiaoyao Mountain and Forest, but he did dream about being whipped. If Zhu Huntang did not make random guesses, but learned some of Zonking's preferences through dreams, it would inevitably make the mature woman's secret shame like a flower bone that has been forcibly opened, and the tender core under the layers of petals, is delicate and delicate that cannot even bear the prying eyes of others, and will shiver as if exposed to the cold wind of early spring. Last night's dream was actually Dandan's harem certification ceremony. Zhu Huntang looked solemn. Only Dandan-certified daughters-in-law have dreams similar to Lu Chang'an's Xiaoyao mountains and forests if they are still in line and under observation. Even if they enter the dream, it is just soy sauce. Ah, Zhongqing couldn't help but pick up the big kettle on the table and drink water. While his heart was beating wildly, he couldn't help but wonder whether he was surprised, or shy and happy, just like waiting for his sweetheart to unveil his head in the bridal chamber. Who has entered her authentication dream? Lu Chang'an took the opportunity to ask. Zhongqing. Zhu Huntang said from a distance, pointing to Zhongqing, who was secretly rejoicing, I won 50 billion, but I don't plan to tell anyone. Qin Yinan, Bai Hui, En Nuan, Li Hongfang, Dongdong Mom, next door Lu's wife. The number of people is not large. Zhongqing did a little calculation and found that his side has the advantage, and there is Miss San, the leader, who can raise the banner and have the exclusive advantage. Hey, shouldn't the leader be the wife in the next building? Of course, the wife in the next building refers to the third wife. Zhongqing understood immediately. Sure enough, he still knew in his heart that when it came to factional competition, the unreliable third lady was more reliable than the third wife in everything. Much more powerful, more suitable to be a leader, and he, his little cousin and the third wife must unite with the third lady, the numerical advantage. Zhongqing patted his cheek. Zhu Huntang always instilled in her the concepts of palace fighting and factions, intentionally or unintentionally. Now he was following her in her wild thoughts. Lu Chang'an also breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, there were no other irrelevant characters. No, there were also irrelevant characters among these people. Shangguan Dandan's certification was not equal to Lu Chang'an's certification. Professor Lu and Professor Ling should also be dreaming, but there is no way of knowing what their dreams are. They dream because they have your nutrients in their bodies, so they can sense some movements from last night and have dream reactions. Zhu Huntang felt a little regretful. Professor Lu is such a wonderful person. After he becomes the leader of the Zhu Fenglai sword sect, he will recruit Professor Lu. Such stunning beauty can be used as an important resource to control Lu Chang'an's position as the leader of the Legacy section. All I know is that the dragon chants all day long and will never try to make a comeback to regain the position of the sect leader. Professor Ling is actually pretty good, and he can be an elite disciple. After all, Professor Ling's charm is only the temperament and mature figure of a middle-aged and highly educated female elite. Compared with Professor Lu, who can be equal to Qin Yinan and become an elder as soon as he gets started, there are still some gaps. Well, it is necessary to recruit people to be elite disciples to dilute the shameful history that the lowest elite disciple of Zhu Fenglai sword sect was only Zhu Huntang. Zhongqing didn't understand what he heard, but it seemed that Lu Chang'an and the two professors were also confused. Zhongqing looked at Lu Chang'an in disbelief and a little aggrieved. She should have approached Lu Chang'an earlier than these two people, but Zhongqing didn't have this kind of nutrients. Don't listen to her nonsense. Regardless of whether Zhongqing is the daughter-in-law certified by Shangguan Dandan, Lu Chang'an also thinks that she is well behaved and obedient, so he still needs to calm her down to prevent her from becoming anxious and impatient and sending pictures more frequently. And video to him. Zhongqing forced a smile and showed a look of how can I take it seriously, but he was already worried about it in his heart. Now that progress has been made with Dandan, the next step is to please Dandan even more in order to better help the third wife in her plan to win favor. As for the nutrients she also wants, it is just incidental. Professor Lu and Professor Ling were stimulated when they dreamed. So what is the reason why other people enter the dream? Lu Chang'an knew that Zhu Huntang was stalling for time, postponing the pain of being beaten after breakfast, or delaying going to school later, but now he still had to take the opportunity to ask her more questions. Who made him want to get something out of her? He had to give in to her machinations. Zhu Huntang held a piece of grapefruit meat that looked like countless exquisite diamonds inlaid together. She slowly removed a piece of fruit flesh, then used the tip of a needle to open a piece of grapefruit meat special seasoning. She wanted to finish the piece of grapefruit meat like this. Only then are they willing to go to school. Because they have dull hair, they can realize be thinking. Do you know be thinking? Zhu Huntang looked at Lu Chang'an intently. After all, he also had some achievements in biology. From time to time, he could use one or two professional terms to make him feel ashamed and admire her at the same time. That's called hive thinking or swarm thinking. You're an illiterate person who will remember everything you learn, Lu Chang'an said angrily. Really? The so-called naming is just that the certification of authoritative and standard organizations has gained widespread recognition. I will send a letter to the relevant organizations later and ask them to mention hive mind in the articles they submit to me in the future. All words related to hive thinking should be changed to be thinking. No, all words should be changed to bleeding thinking, Zhu Huntang said nonchalantly. Could it be that such a great creature, the overlord of the universe, can't even master this way of thinking? All the bees in the universe are Zhu Huntang's subordinates. They can all obey and respond to Zhu Huntang's orders, just like bees listen to the queen bee. Lu Chang'an pressed his temples. Seeing his action, Zhongqing hurriedly walked over and stretched out his fingers. He turned his head and looked at him. After he understood what she meant and put down his fingers, he gently helped her press. He actually doesn't need this kind of external massage to improve his emotional and physical feelings, but there is no doubt that the tenderness from women can soothe his inexplicable irritability, Zhu Huntang analyzed wittily. You understand so well, then do you know why I am irritable? Lu Chang'an looked at her coldly. Zhu Huntang quickly avoided his eyes and continued to open the grapefruit meat. But why do we have dull hair in our body? Where is the hair? What is it for? Zhongqing asked curiously. Have you ever seen horror movies about ironworms? That's it, Lu Chang'an said. No. That's not the case, right? Zhongqing was startled, and then realized that Lu Chang'an must be teasing her. He really hated it. How could he make Shangguan Dandan such a perfect, elegant, dignified, noble, lovely, and beautiful person? Little girl, what kind of ironworm is associated with it? Men often scare women to make them feel the need for protection. They can use this emotion to gain women's dependence, and dependence is often the reason why women are manipulated by a man. Zhu Huntang couldn't help but analyze again. Hurry up and finish your breakfast. Lu Chang'an couldn't wait to spank his child. Dandan will leave a strand of hair on me, Dong Dong, and her certified daughter-in-law. This is something to protect us. At the same time, it can also form bleeding thoughts. This is the basis for entering the dream together. Zhu Huntang quickly broke the news to divert the old man from his irritable mood of wanting to beat someone up. Even though he felt that it was inevitable that he would be beaten today, who wouldn't resist with a fishball on his back? At some point, Dandan can disconnect her, Dong Dong and Zhu Huntang from the structure of bleeding thinking, allowing others to continue to form bleeding thinking, so that the group can feel Lu Chang'an's care for the individuals among them, which is also a kind of harem-assigned solution. Dandan was always able to pamper her moth in such a meticulous way. Why couldn't he learn from Dandan and be considerate and tenderly protective of his Mai? I'm really immortal. Author, Chu Lian Kui Kan Ru Xiahua. Chapter 1107. In order to divert Lu Chang'an's attention and delay his time to go to school, Zhu Huntang had to leak a lot of secrets. Maybe he would be on guard against him next time he carried out a conspiracy against him. But there is nothing that can be done about it. Fighting with his father is endless fun. Zhu Huntang feels that he still maintains a positive attitude towards learning in general. The current resistance is mainly to compete with Lu Chang'an and show off his wit. In 5 or 6 million years, I will take the initiative to go to school, and I will rarely be late or skip school. However, Zhu Huntang's attempt to get rid of the fate of going to school by slowing down his breakfast was still not feasible. After Lu Chang'an basically figured out who would enter the dream world and what was the basis for Shang Guandandan to realize this operation, he no longer wanted to continue working with Zhu Huntang. He snatched the grapefruit meat from Zhu Huntang's hand and ate it in one bite. Then drink her juice in one gulp. There are often as many as 40 or 50 varieties of breakfast in Zhuhantang, each of which is only as small as a chopstick. Lu Chang'an eats them all in one bowl. She could only sit blankly at the dining table and stare at him. There was no breakfast as a tool to delay time. Many children eat like counting rice. They hold a bowl of rice, use chopsticks to pick up 2 grains of rice, and put it to their mouths. After their parents prompt them, they slowly hold 1 grain in their lips, and then put the remaining grain in their mouths. Return to bowl. At this time, parents should not coax or urge him, but rather grab his rice bowl and eat it himself, and then starve him until the next meal to see if he will behave like this again. Zhu Huntang looked quite big, but his problems were no different from those of a child. Lu Chang'an chose the correct education method. Driving her to the car and giving her a beating not only maintained her majesty and leadership in front of the bread man, but also took care of her self-esteem. It also served as a discipline, and Lu Chang'an himself felt refreshed. You bad old man, ever since you knew that I am a peerless fairy with the ability to transform. It takes many years for a human being to give birth to a fairy. A mere injury will not do anything to me. After beating me, he even skipped the step of spitting to treat my injuries. Zhu Huntang sobbed, feeling that a lot of his father's love had been lost. There may be reasons for this due to Yan Qingcheng and Lu Qianqian, but they are not as good as Zhu Huntang. As Zhu Huntang grows in the future, he will eventually realize that only the Supreme Master of the universe is the most qualified to inherit the 9 provinces Fenglai sword section, the fairy in the Lord's place. You don't have to worry too much about losing the qualifications to be the heir and give up fighting with him. This is also a kind of experience that can make you more cunning, and resourceful. You promised yourself well that you would go to school obediently today, but from the moment you got up, you have been trying to skip class. Can you not get beaten? Lu Chang'an's tone was softer. He also knew very well that even though she looked like a pitiful little girl, as soon as she found a topic that could ridicule him, she would immediately reveal her true colors, and Lu Chang'an would be so angry that he would burst into anger in just a few words. Smoking can, at best, shatter your eardrums and stop her from beeping, or at worst, burst your heart. Obviously in the dream last night, you hugged me to sleep. You would rather stay still, and didn't want to disturb my sleep. You seemed to love me so much, but then you were so cruel when you woke up. Zhu Huntang was heartbroken while holding his favorite little quilt. There were many melodious patterns on this quilt. They were running, playing, eating grass, and doing whatever they wanted on the green grassland, which represented Zhu Huntang's uninhibited desire for freedom. Heart. You also know that it was a dream. Shouldn't parents realize their daughters' dreams? The key is that your dreams are often just wishful thinking. Either you want to usurp the throne, or you want to ride on my neck and become a tyrant, and you want me to become a walking zombie. If all your dreams come true, how about you having me? If Lu Chang'an wasn't free, he wouldn't want to talk to her at all. By the way, talking to her directly is often harmful to physical and mental health. Lu Chang'an understands why Su Mei often sends messages to Zhu Huntang through Zhongqing instead of talking to her directly. Lu Chang'an took out his mobile phone and looked at it. Although this thing will slowly lower people's IQ, especially it has a great impact on all aspects of thinking, logic, memory ability, and reading ability, compared with the harm Zhu Huntang did to him, it is still acceptable. Zhu Huntang covered himself with the quilt and lay motionless on the seat. Usurping the throne was a must. Riding on Lu Chang'an's neck and dominating him was an lofty ideal that could not be shaken for 100 million years. As for letting him become the walking zombie who only loves her as a daughter, can he give up? Thinking about his various strategies in his mind, Zhu Huntang raised one foot and put it on Lu Chang'an to show that although he had been punished by him, he could still suppress him a little. Exposing his eyes from the quilt, Zhu Huntang glanced out the car window and saw Lu Yuang sitting on the roadside talking to someone. There was a traffic jam ahead and the traffic was moving slowly. Zhu Huntang quickly knelt by the car window and watched, then turned around and greeted Lu Chang'an. "Dad, Professor Lu is lonely and unbearable, and he is letting people touch his little hands in broad daylight." Lu Chang'an originally didn't want to pay attention to her, but he still had to care about his girlfriend's mother based on his identity, so he took a look. Professor Lu is looking for someone to tell his fortune. So Lu Chang'an suspected that Zhu Huntang knew that it was fortune-telling, and just said that on purpose. Taiwan Island has not experienced various ideological education and revolutionary movements. It is a place where the dregs of Chinese tradition are gathered together. When it comes to superstition, Taiwan Island is one of the best in the Chinese cultural circle. Zhu Huntang was exposed to such an environment, it was impossible that he had not seen it before. But those who do this over there usually open a shop, or even if it's not easy, they just set up a stall and create a sign. But here in Juncha, if you want to open a shop with a fortune-telling sign, it is an act of provocation to the country. Suspected of feudal superstition activities, and could not obtain a business license. Juncha's fortune-tellers are often like street girls. They appear in some relatively remote urban rural areas. When they see passers-by, they raise their eyebrows, show a mysterious or flattering smile, and say hello in a low voice. "Boss, tell your fortune." Some people were misunderstood and approached quietly. When they heard it was fortune-telling, they immediately lost interest and thought it was soliciting prostitution. Some people prepare one or two small benches in corners of parks where middle-aged and elderly people are concentrated, and hold a card with a gossip on it and write their name and service content, which is considered to be very particular. The fortune teller in the park always has his own relatively fixed sitter. The sitter is usually a middle-aged woman in her 40s or 50s, wearing gold and silver. Whenever a passerby stops and seems to be a potential customer, the fortune teller starts talking in a casual manner, and the shills nod frequently. Some actors will shout, clap their hands and marvel, to show that the fortune teller is very accurate. "You still have Professor Liu's class to attend today, don't forget it." Lu Chang'an warned Zhu Huntang that she could not understand many of the courses in school now, but it was impossible not to understand what Professor Lu taught, as long as she studied hard, can increase knowledge. Lu Chang'an sincerely hopes that she can correctly grasp historical and cultural allusions, idiom stories, and the correct usage of idioms. Every time he hears her using or stigmatizing idioms that are one of the essences of the Chinese language, he wants to beat her. Many idioms that have been passed down for thousands of years concisely and vividly express profound cultural connotations, life principles, and elegant literary charm. However, they have been cleverly distorted and stigmatized by some people. They are really vulgar, and vulgar, Zhu Huntang is such boring people. Liu Chacha Bagua, good and bad luck, misfortune, marriage, wealth, fortune-telling, palmistry, dream interpretation, word detection. Zhu Huntang saw the fortune-teller's sign, read it all the way, and said with great certainty, "Professor Lu must be the interpreter of dreams." Lu Cha Cha, that's the 6 Yao. 6 Yao fortune-telling originated from Li Junming's Yuxu research system during the Shangguan Dandan period. Shangguan Dandan probably knew the founders of these fortune-tellers, the 6 Yao Bagua. If you go to the countryside, everyone will there are always a few elderly people in the village who know how to judge the 64 hexagrams of King Wen, the 6-line method, and so on. Lu Chang'an was a little nostalgic. When he lived in the countryside, Every family would take out a pair of horn hexagrams and sandalwood hexagrams from their collection to ask the ancestors what they meant during festivals and festivals. It was usually simple. The hexagrams are divided into treasure hexagrams, yin hexagrams, and yang hexagrams. You pick them up and throw them away until you are satisfied with the hexagrams. If it takes too many times to throw the bagua, it means that the ancestors do not agree or are willing to protect it, and they will inevitably feel uneasy, so they will add more incense, money, paper, and burn it, and try it again. If the hexagram goes well this time, it means that the ancestors have agreed, the gloom in their hearts will disappear, and everyone will be happy. Some people born in the 1970s, 1980s, or even the early 1990s may have some memories and impressions, but those born in the 2000s and 2000s in cities probably don't know. Zhu Huntang was not interested in what Lu Cha read or what it did. He analyzed wittily, Professor Lu must have come here to ask for someone to interpret the dream because of last night's dream. Normal dreams are forgotten by everyone when they wake up. Yes, the dream interpretation must have caused a major psychological impact and influence on her. I suggest you stop analyzing. Knowing that Zhu Huntang never had anything nice to say, Lu Chang'an warned him calmly. After all, she was just talking about Lu Yuang, and there was no reason for him to beat her up right away to stop her from talking nonsense. 8 ways. Nightmares generally have a major impact on people's minds. However, after nightmares, people will adjust themselves psychologically. Unless the nightmare continues to affect the mental state and causes long-term uneasiness, the solution to the dream will be triggered. Desire. Professor Lu came early in the morning, so there is no long-term impact, so the possibility of her having a nightmare and interpreting it is very small. The road blockage eased and the car gradually moved forward. Zhu Huntang turned to look at Professor Lu, who was walking away, his eyes shining with alertness and thoughtfulness. Lu Chang'an said nothing. Could she use 30 to 40% of her observation and analysis skills in study? Since it is not a nightmare, but it can still have a major impact on her mind, then the situation in the dream should be the kind of dream that brings guilt, and shame. The important thing is that, like nightmares, if these feelings are just dream scenes that have nothing to do with reality, you will soon be relieved. Just like you dreamed. Zhu Huntang tried to give a chestnut. If you don't want to lose your language function, don't use me as an example. Lu Chang'an gently stroked the head of his baby daughter, and the atmosphere of fatherly love and daughterly filial piety permeated the carriage. Just like I dreamed that I won the position of the leader of the sect, you were lonely and cold because you lost your power. The sense of loss that you no longer have power makes your back look like an abdicated monkey king in the sunset, watching the young monkeys chatting with others. The female monkey. Zhu Huntang paid attention to his wording and carefully grabbed Lu Chang'an's hand to prevent him from suddenly quaking. Lu Chang'an took a deep breath. He was a little concerned about Lu Yuang, but because of the gap in IQ and EQ, it was difficult for him to lower his cognitive level to figure out some things about Lu Yuang. Zhu Huntang and Lu Yuang can be called a pair of losers and novices. They can understand each other, and it is useful to listen to Zhu Huntang's opinions. Through calm observation, Zhu Huntang determined that his father wanted to know the conclusion of his analysis of Lu Yuang. He suddenly felt a little proud, spread a small quilt on him, and then lay on the small quilt again, holding his hands on his chest, exposing Zujmi. Hey, hold on to the momentum of the spider. In this kind of dream, I felt a little guilty. But after I woke up, this guilt disappeared, because I knew it was just an illusion and had nothing to do with reality. You are not a lonely and cold figure in the sunset, but the 100,000 mountains suppressing me. Looking at Professor Liu's current situation, the dream has affected her so much that she can't wait to interpret it, which means that her dream probably reflects some kind of psychology, behavior, or even her current experience in reality. It's guilt. Is it guilt? Is it shame? Or is it a combination of both? a sense of betrayal that cannot be let go at all. Zhu Huntang's eyes rolled around, and he gradually wrapped the quilt around himself to form a kind of protection. He did not look at Lu Chang'an's face and continued to talk to himself. If you have a dream about immorality, ask a fortune teller to tell it. Even if the fortune teller is a professional, she will probably speak in a cryptic or even distorted way. Just like patients often deceive doctors in order to get the doctor's diagnosis of his condition to be more in line with his desired results, well, so Professor Lu is just doing something to deceive herself and others, and is not tactful at all. From this, it can be concluded that she is not smart enough to be my teacher, so I don't have to attend her class today. Lu Chang'an lowered his raised hand. As long as she didn't incorporate him into it, there would be no problem with her diverging her thoughts here. If it weren't for her temperament of opening a dyeing workshop just by giving her some color, Lu Chang'an would even want to nod her approval. Analysis. As for what exactly Professor Lu dreamed about, Lu Chang'an didn't want to analyze it, and he didn't want to know. Why should he care about other people's dreams? Dreams often involve privacy, and it is immoral to pry into other people's privacy. Lu Chang'an has a noble character and does not do such a thing. But after discovering that Zhu Huntang was still trying to avoid studying, Lu Chang'an's heart was as firm as the Himalayas, and he couldn't bear it. Why does this incredible creature exist? Why does she exist in this world? How could she appear in this world? Such a creature should not be born in a normal world. There must be something wrong with this world. Just as he felt uncomfortable inside, Zhu Huntang jumped off him again, asked the driver to stop, and then ran towards Lu Yuwang with his hands one by one. Lu Chang'an looked at the time and saw that the first class was almost over, so he did not catch up. If she dared to miss the second class, he would personally make up for her until 12 o'clock tonight. Zhu Huntang went to Lu Yuwang, of course, not to say hello or anything. Opportunities often fall from the sky, but few people look up to discover them. To seize opportunities and become a man of the times, one must have keen observation and efficient action like Zhu Huntang. Based on the content of most people's dreams last night, Zhu Huntang was actually able to figure out Lu Yuwang's dream 9 out of 10 times. She didn't say anything, because she wanted to say it in front of Lu Chang'an. She suspected that Lu Yuwang's dream was something immoral, such as looking at Chang'an under the moon, and the bad old man must have been bleeding. Now that I have guessed such information, I would be sorry for my own ingenuity if I didn't take advantage of it. Professor Lu, why are you here? Zhu Huntang walked up behind Lu Yuwang and patted her shoulder gently. Lu Yuwang looked back and saw that it was Zhu Huntang. He patted his chest and stood up. The panic in his eyes disappeared in a flash. He hurriedly took out 200 yuan in cash from his bag and gave it to the fortune teller. I'm telling you, hey, don't leave, I haven't finished yet. Lu Yuwang quickly pulled Zhu Huntang aside and sneered, this is feudal superstition. I was just curious, so I just asked. Did you have a dream last night? Zhu Huntang looked Lu Yuwang up and down. She was indeed a stunning beauty. Professor Lu seemed to be absent-minded today. He got up early and rushed to interpret his dream. Naturally, he did not dress up carefully. But the spring scenery at this moment is still so exciting, like flower bones the size of rice grains hidden under the leaves, which makes you happy when you open the green leaves. It's more like the gurgling spring water, without the coldness of winter mixed with ice and snow. When you reach out and touch some water, you will feel warm and moist. It makes people think of the plump duck. When the water is warm, the fish float in the shallow water and taste the contents. The beauty is intoxicating, and I just want to dive deeper and find the fun under the water, but it is difficult for those women who wear heavy makeup and want all their charm to be piled on the surface. It would be a pity for a woman like this not to be included in the Zhu Fenglai sword sect and become an important asset used by Zhu Huntang to control the Taizhang sect master. Yeah, how do you know? Lu Yuwang did not deny it. There was nothing to feel guilty about dreaming, and it was impossible for others to know what she dreamed about. I chatted with An Nuan this morning. She also had a dream last night. Zhu Huntang rolled his eyes, showing some teasing. He first provoked Lu Yuwang to feel guilty, so that she would be a little flustered and not so calm. After all, Lu Yuwang was able to guess the existence of Zhu Huntang's peerless password, so he had to use some thought to deal with it. Zhu Huntang did not chat with An Nuan, but An Nuan participated in the dream as his daughter-in-law last night, so she would naturally dream. Professor Lu may have had an immoral dream, and it is impossible for him to communicate with An Nuan, so Zhu Huntang's lies will naturally not be exposed. She had a dream last night. Why did you guess that I had a dream too? Lu Yuwang was surprised. Is there any connection between them? Have you ever heard of bleeding thinking? No. Zhu Huntang nodded. Not everyone is as knowledgeable as himself, and only the bad old man can barely keep up with him. My thinking is like a group of sheep running freely on the green grassland. Some of them eat. There is some grass. Well, it means that in a group of sheep, if one of them is beaten by a dragon and screams, the other sheep will also feel the pain. Lu Yuwang couldn't help being shocked. What did Zhu Huntang want to say? What does she know? Zhu Huntang paid attention to Lu Yuwang's expression. When she said this, Lu Yuwang had such a big reaction. Could it be that she had already experienced the influence of her thinking? For example, Lu Chang'an beat An Nuan, but Professor Lu was in pain. Most likely, since Lu Yuwang has had such an experience, she will be more likely to fall into the trap if she has preconceptions. Zhu Huntang looked as usual and continued, I am certain that the dream you had last night was due to the influence of An Nuan's dream. According to the principle of Biya's thinking, she sensed her dream. Lu Yuwang watched Zhu Huntang's eyes darting around, looking like he was about to do something insidious and cunning. He knew that she probably had bad intentions, but at this time he couldn't deal with it calmly. He felt guilty and only wanted Zhu Huntang to do something sinister and cunning. I can't guess the scene in my dream. There is nothing we can do about this. You and An Nuan have both taken the nutrients Lu Chang'an gave you, right? Ah, he gave me some facial cream. It was originally applied on my face, but it always tasted delicious. Lu Yuwang was annoyed. It was indeed related to these things, but even if he knew what these things would bring, Lu Yuwang couldn't refuse the influence of BBAA's thinking. Which woman in her late 20s or early 30s can refuse the feeling of youth? Since taking Lu Chang'an's facial cream, Lu Yuwang feels that not only is he 18 years old on the inside, but his appearance and skin are also 18 years old. It's just that the age calculated by the date and month of birth on the ID card is still deceiving everyone. These nutrients have extraordinary origins and can make people who have used them gather together and form bleeding thoughts. Since you and An Nuan are a family, the natural impact is more obvious. It may even happen that Lu Chang'an and An Nuan are doing something, but you can feel it. Zhu Huntang looked up at the sky, concealing his inner excitement, and sighed calmly, this is too bad. Lu Yuwang held onto the street lamp next to her, feeling blood rushing to her cheeks and her body shaking. The feeling of shame made her bite her lips tightly, not daring to look at Zhu Huntang. Actually, this is not without a solution. Really? Lu Yuwang raised his head in disbelief. This matter was mainly about shame, but also a little trouble. For example, after Lu Chang'an and An Nuan got married, he couldn't live with them. It's not a big deal, just like an itch, it's bearable without being scratched, but it's so comforting when it's scratched. As long as you find Lu Chang'an and propose to join the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect, we will be a team, and I will naturally help you solve the problem. Zhu Huntang saw the situation. What the hell? Zhu Fenglai sword section. Lu Chang'an is the sect leader. I am now, well, I will inherit the Zhu Fenglai sword sect in the future. Anyway, you do as I say and I will help you, Zhu Huntang revealed. He only makes transactions and shows no mercy. Okay, Lu Yuwang has no choice. This problem has been bothering her for a long time. If it can be solved, as long as the conditions are not too excessive, she can agree. After you join the 9 provinces Fenglai sword sect, you must ask Lu Chang'an that you want to be an elder. This is a high power position, on an equal footing with Qinyan, and Zhu Huntang lowered his voice and looked in the direction of Lushan Mountain. Probably because Qinyan lived on such a high mountain and had Lu Qianqian in his belly, his powerful power created a considerable sense of intimidation to Zhu Huntang. Lu Yuwang nodded repeatedly. Although he didn't quite understand, since teacher Qin was involved, he wanted to understand a little bit. As for after you become an elder, you will be mine. If there is a factional struggle or a dispute between the sect leaders in the future, who should you support? You, Lu Yuwang said politely. Who else would be the leader of the Zhu Fenglai sword sect? Zhu Huntang put his hands on his hips and laughed loudly. He was really a cunning bad guy who did all kinds of evil and used all kinds of tricks. Big chapter, various requests.